think for real this time? Do we have audio this time? It looks like we have audio this time. We'll find out in like 10 seconds when chat responds.
Here we go. Good luck.
I did a really cool intro, and you guys didn't hear it at all. So now you get a lazy one. Hello, we're Fat and Trait and Zeke. We play D&D a lot. If you're here, it's probably because you watch us play D&D a lot. But we're not playing D&D, we argue about D&D, and we're here today to argue about D&D in front of all of you guys. We've collected a bunch of questions, we're going to argue about them, or maybe not. And there's also a link down at the bottom of the screen if you want to submit some more questions for us to argue about. Should we, roll initiative?
Fucking knocked it out of the park. I feel like you did better the second time than the first time, honestly.
Well, that's crazy.
That's how we always do these, is by rolling initiative.
We know that
it is true.
Practicing never helps make anything better. Let's roll some initiative. I'm not opening Foundry. That's going to take 45 minutes. I'm doing Wildfire.
Yeah.
I'm going to use my fancy 18 dice, but I need to go and rinse them off.
Rinse them off?
Rinse them off? What does that mean?
I'm going to explain in a second.
What? I got a 12. But we got to give him 10 minutes to go wash his wank dice.
Ooh, yikes. That's better than what happened with Joe yesterday when we were playing Age of Awakening, and he was like, I gotta go take a shower. I just spilled about a half a pound of garlic on my shirt.
True.
That was the wildest shit I've ever heard.
Actual sitcom madness. I'm leading with a 12. Zeke has a 3. And Drake has failed all of us. It's okay, Drake. You take your time.
Okay, I'm gonna roll.
I believe in you.
That is a 9.
Alright. Fuck, it's on me then.
Haha, you've both forgotten the meta that you want to
You want to go low, yeah. Okay, so am I gonna... So I can either lowball this, or I can throw us straight into the one where we fight. I think I'm gonna lowball it.
Do you want a minute to think about it while I explain my sticky dice situation?
Yeah. Tell us why your dice are sticky, you freak.
Hey. Look, we're not supposed to be fighting yet. So Zeke, wonderful DM and friend, has been very generous. And for Age of Awakening, he got all of us these really cool, character-related, coasters. But the coasters also have this little, tray for dice. And he also got me a set of dice that are, 18 themed, and they're very sweet and wonderful. And I like to have them next to me. But I don't play with physical dice usually, right. So I just have them in this tray, and then I have this coaster that I'm using. And the thing that I always forget about is that I drink Coca-Cola like a motherfucker.
Yep,
and
everything makes sense.
That shit fizzes a lot. And so the fizz has apparently been collecting on these dice.
Oh, so they're real sticky.
Yeah, so when I reached for it, I was like, oh, these are sticky as hell. So
that would do it.
Yeah. We have to find a solution for that.
Not the story I was expecting after Age of Awakening last night, but
yeah.
Truly.
Yeah, after last night I had a good time with my dice.
As one does. You gotta, it's important. Everybody processes grief in their own way.
Yeah.
No one has ever, in the entire history of Dungeons & Dragons, cast Simulacrum and not done weird shit with it. Except for patches, apparently.
Look,
yeah.
I'm sorry that I spent the entire session being sad, and I just needed a moment of levity for myself.
Understandable.
The only moments of levity I spent carving a sigil into a wall to keep me out of my own home.
Mm-hmm.
That truly may have been the most emotional whiplash of any D&D session I've ever played or DM'd. Going from the heavy 18 shit to beans.
It was much needed.
True.
And then right back into the heavy shit.
Yep. All right, I'm lowballing it. We're doing this. Number one. This is actually from Drake. This is cheating, but it's a good question, so we're doing it anyway. What are your feelings on sending other players away from the table? either to do secret encounters with a single player or to provide information to only some of the players. And I believe we do this clockwise, which means Zeke has to answer first.
I love that shit. You guys know that I love that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I for sure. I love it. I love it. I like. It kind of goes contrary to a strong feeling that I have about PF2's secret dice rolls, which we don't need to get into because this is supposed to be a softball question.
We will.
But like, yeah, I really enjoy like. I don't like do it for every single. There was a time when I liked to do it for every single thing, and that got kind of silly. But for something that I'm trying to think of the last time I did this. I've done it a lot in Age of Awakening, like multiple times. One of my favorite times that I've done it was when you guys, spoilers for Age of Awakening, were seeing the Morning Star and Volus in the Light Spire, and she was like telepathically Galadrieling each of you guys and giving you like an offer to like join her side, and she'd give you, those things that she was promising you. And I didn't want you guys as players to know. I knew that you guys would know that you were all being offered things.
Sure.
But I didn't want you to know what you were all being offered, and I didn't want you to have the like meta time to discuss because you were like, you were borderline in initiative at that point.
Right. Or to know how other people responded.
Exactly. So I wanted everyone to like have to make the decision for themselves without input.
I big agree with this, and I'll wait my turn, but I'm coming back to that because it's the same rationale that I have for my answer. But Drake first. Oh, also, sorry, before you answered, hey, there's going to be spoilers. There's going to be spoilers for all of our campaigns in here. Let's see.
We'll probably try and give a warning.
We'll give a warning. If you're watching from the future, Wildfolk we just did 18. I think Wake just did 56. AOA's on like 80 something.
We just did episode 70, and if you're watching from the future, it's near the end, so you're basically scoped for all of Age of Awakening here.
Sick. All right, carry on.
Oh boy, I flip flop on this a lot because there's part of me that not only partly because we're streaming this, but also just as a group that's hanging out and having fun together, it's kind of nice to know or like to see and experience everything together. But I think there are like good moments where that can add a level of tension as long as you aren't doing it too often.
Absolutely.
I agree with that for sure.
It can for sure be overdone, and it could be used in times when it isn't like important or necessary. Like if I sit everybody away from the table every time somebody gets a sending that only they would hear, it's just kind of silly.
Right. So like the whole point of a tabletop RPG, whether you're streaming or not, it doesn't matter if it's just a home game. You're all there to enjoy a story together, and if you're sending people away so that they can't hear the story, then that kind of defeats the point. We're all here to spectate. You're equal parts actor and spectator in this. But to jump back to what Zeke said, the thing that makes me like doing it occasionally is the exact same reason that I like secret roles. I typically prefer for things to be treated with secrecy if it's going to have an immediate impact on the player's behavior right there in that moment, or like in the same episode or the next episode or what have you. If it's something where it doesn't really change anyone's behavior, then by all means, like, let people listen in. That's what we're here for. We're here to hear the story together. But if it's something where, like, oh, they need to keep the secret so that the other players are not given the curse of meta-knowledge. A lot of people talk about meta-knowledge like it's a thing that they want, and I want to have as little meta-knowledge as possible. It's hard to act when I have meta-knowledge. Like, it's much easier if I don't know anything more than my character knows, so that I can try hard as hard as I can try hard. And for that reason, I love it when I'm like sent away from the table if there's a conversation that would influence the way that my character behaves if he knew about it.
Hell yeah. I think that's the big thing. Yeah. Like if knowing this would affect other characters' behavior, then I try to keep it private.
Right. And just like secret roles, you reveal it soon. You don't keep it hidden forever. You reveal it once the moment has passed.
Oh no, I keep it forever. I shouldn't say that. I let the player decide how long to keep it.
That's fair.
Maybe they never say.
Yeah. Okay.
The Morningstar situation was especially like that was a good moment to use that.
Oh yeah. We had a lot of tension from that because Frog didn't know if Jack was staying behind. He had to make that split-second decision, like, do I teleport out or not? And I think that if he had the meta-knowledge of how I responded and what I was planning on doing, it wouldn't have been as tense or as fun. Like that would be worse than the badness of not hearing the story as it unfolds. It's the lesser of two evils, or the more fun of two funs, depending on how you like to interpret numbers.
Yeah, like you said, like the whole point is all of us enjoying a story together. And I think if what you're doing enhances story, then it's good for everybody. Everyone's story is enhanced.
Yeah. We did it. We got through one, and we didn't even argue that much.
I have one other point.
Hit me.
One other time that I've used it, and I think it's potentially good, is if you have like a very quiet or reserved player, giving them some secret knowledge that they then are forced to share with the party themselves.
Yes.
It's a good way to kind of help pull them out.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Hell yes.
Which touches on a bigger thing about... No, this is a whole separate topic. We'll save that for later. But the idea of giving players knowledge that the other players need more than they do.
Right. That's, huge. Huge.
All right.
You know. So how now we're answering these clockwise. Are we asking them clockwise?
Yes, we also ask them clockwise, yeah.
Because we could complicate it instead for no reason arbitrarily and just do it in initiative order.
That's true. We rolled initiative. You're right. Yeah, we rolled initiative for a reason. Let's use it. So Drake, you're up. And I'll answer first.
No, Zeke would answer first.
No, the answering still goes clockwise. The asking is an initiative order.
Yeah, otherwise you would have had to answer mine first. We're already committed at this point.
Well, we gotta pick. We either gotta go clockwise or counterclockwise with both. Otherwise, my tiny little Canadian brain isn't gonna hold.
Asking is counterclockwise. Answering is clockwise. What is there to understand?
All right, you guys can handle all that.
We got
I'll just pick my question.
Yeah, you go for it.
I've heard in Canada the clocks go the other direction.
They're also mysteriously 8 minutes ahead for some reason that we can't figure out.
For no reason.
For no reason at all.
But only one of our clocks. The one that is
yours.
Connected to the internet.
That's the weirdest part. It's not like you just have an alarm clock sitting on your shelf that is off by 8 minutes. You're on the internet. It auto updates you to be 8 minutes ahead of all of us. Fucking weird. Fucking weird, man.
So wait, is that my question or Drake's?
It's Drake's, yeah. We've already done it.
Oh, I know the question that I wanted to ask.
Do it.
Where is it here?
Oh, some of these new ones are really good.
Yeah, there's a lot of great questions in here.
Okay, here it is. Relatively new to TTRPGs, I've heard one of the best ways to start is to dive into DMing. Any advice on where to start, best resources, games for someone to begin their DM journey?
Ooh, this is fun. I actually really like this philosophy a lot. A lot of people, when they're trying to get into tabletop games, are like, oh, I'm looking for a game. Which, is normal. That's the easier thing to do for sure. It's less intimidating. It's much less intimidating. But it's also harder to find a group. It's harder to find a game. If you played like an MMO, you understand healer privilege and to some degree tank privilege, where if you queue as a healer or a tank, you get instant queues, and if you queue as a DPS, you get 45-minute queues. It's the same thing for D&D. If you queue as a DM, you're going to get a group instantly. Pick your favorite friends. You have your pick of the litter. You get to choose exactly who you want to play with, when you want to play. You make all the rules. You're in demand. So I definitely recommend, starting as a DM is a great way to do it. And as for where to actually start, okay. We're going to fight. Okay, fighting starts now. Fighting starts right now. We're doing it.
We did it. We're about 12 minutes in?
Yeah. So here we go. I'm gonna start by betraying myself here a little bit. I'm gonna say some words, and if you're listening to this video, I want you to hear me out. Don't listen to the first two sentences I say and then walk away, because it's important. I think that for brand new players, especially brand new DMs, D&D 5th edition is a okay place to start. It's very easy to learn. It's very easy to just kind of sit down, get a group, and play a couple of sessions and get moving. It is very approachable. It's very friendly. The whole design goal of D&D 5th edition is to funnel people in as fast and as painlessly as possible to get them sitting at a table and playing a tabletop game together. And to that extent, I think it works. It's great at that one job. And then you need to bounce. You need to bounce immediately. As soon as you feel like you're like, oh, I've got the hang of this, I can DM, leave and never look back. Never touch 5th edition ever again, because the game falls apart as soon as you start actually trying to play it. It's a... People, okay. I'm gonna soapbox for a long time. People talk about D&D 5th edition like, oh, it's the simple system, it's the easy system. And that's true for the first 2 or 3 sessions. But I actually think that 5th edition is a hard system to DM, specifically because of all the problems that I have with 5th edition. There are so many things where they shunt so much of the work onto the DM that you have to have such an intimate knowledge of how the system works, how combat works, how balance works, how the classes work, because they require you to make so many judgment calls. Whereas a lot of other systems don't. A lot of other systems will actually hold your hand and give you useful rules and rulings. They don't expect you to do so much of the work, and 5e expects you to do so much of the work. Also, 5e costs money. Pathfinder 2 doesn't cost money. I think PF2 is a great system that everybody can enjoy. It's free, and it's not as hard as it sounds.
5e only costs money if you are a narc. Also,
I mean, that's true.
Let me be very clear. Everyone should pay for the things that they
agree, yeah.
will or do. So here, let me also be very clear.
Yeah.
Everything that Feck just said is largely true if the thing that matters most to you is like how elegantly designed the game you're playing is,
yes,
and not how much fun people are having at the table.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I've been playing 5e for like 7 years, and granted, we have modified and house ruled the shit out of it, but like, it's fun. It's fun. It's a good time.
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's everything's fine. It's fine. And I say this as I have written like 250 pages now of ZE of like fixing 5e. I understand that it's got its problems, but it's good. It's good. Feck's out of his mind. It's good.
I have to do it. I have to do it. It's wild.
This isn't the question, guys.
Yes. So now
Okay.
let me answer the actual question.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you're new to TTRPG and want to get into DMing, Feck's right that like 5e is the best place to do it because it's very approachable. And just like, I don't know, speaking from my own experience, just like learn from your betters. I learned how to do this by watching Feck do it and by watching like Mercer do it and Brennan do it. And once you've like just do something like that, I guess that'd be my biggest piece of advice is just like watch some actual play.
Yeah.
Watch some or like listen to podcasts or whatever and like emulate the things you like about the people that you've watched do this. It's really all it takes.
Hell
like
yeah.
you'll fall into your own style after a little while, but if you're nervous about jumping into it, like if you've watched a couple dozen hours of actual play, you know enough about how this works.
Right.
Like it's you're good. Just jump in and do it. It sounds trite. It sounds like blasé advice, but it's the advice that I was given when I started DMing. It's what I did, and it worked out fine. It's just like just literally just do it. Just jump in and start.
Right. There are so many factors that are more important than the system you use. Like the system you use is the last thing that determines whether your group is having fun or not.
Boy,
Absolutely.
that's debatable.
Yeah, it is. We'll come back to it later.
Yeah, we'll come back to it later. The reason that I brought this up is because I think that my answer is actually not pro 5e, which I know is shocking.
Whoa.
Um,
I'm so proud.
So I do agree with you guys just in general that like 5e is super approachable as far as like just sitting down and getting into a game as quickly and easily as possible. And I obviously disagree with Feck about Pathfinder, and 5e is very easy to DM if you have basic common sense. But like Feck also said, 5e is fucking expensive, you guys.
True.
Like to jump into DMing, you need the player's handbook, the DMG, and the monster manual. That's like a $200 investment minimum.
Right there, that's $180.
Yeah, and that's before like getting any of the splat books and all the extended stuff, like, and before getting like if you're doing something online, paying for a virtual tabletop
Yep.
or other stuff like that, or minis and all that. It's expensive.
If you're
It's a lot
if
to
you're
jump
in
into.
if you're in this audience watching the stream, you're probably going to need Tabaxi and Lizard Folk. That's another $40 right there.
True. But that being said, one of the games that I would recommend as a starting point, because in spite of what Vec may think, I actually play a lot of. I've played, I think, the most TTRPGs out of everybody
That might be true.
here, because I don't hate change. I just hate Pathfinder. So I would recommend genuinely, and this comes with the caveat that unfortunately it can only be played in person. But if you can get an in-person group, I would start with Dread.
Ooh, I've heard that one once or twice.
Yeah, so Dread is designed for essentially one-shots. It's a horror-themed thing, which is the other thing. If you're not into horror, like B horror, then Dread's probably not the system for you, unfortunately. But essentially, instead of rolling dice, Dread uses a nondescript tower of blocks that is legally distinct from Jenga. And instead of rolling dice, whenever you have to do something, you pull from the tower. And if you knock the tower over, your character dies. And like, it's obviously because it's very harsh and a horror theme, it's designed to be played in like little bursts. So a game will be like 3 to 5 hours, depending on what you have going on. But I think that that's a good place to start, just to get a feel for your group. It's a low commitment. It's a lot cheaper to buy. Yeah, and you don't have to go into it being like, well, I'm committing to 10 sessions or something, or God forbid, a multi-year long campaign. You can just sit down. You don't have to spend, hours and hours sifting through the PHP to run a one-shot. Like, you can get a taste for what DMing is like and what your players are like and all that.
Love that. That honestly, and that touches, even if you're starting with a more complicated system like 5e or PF2 or whatever, don't do a little one shot. Do a little maybe 3-shot. Do like don't jump straight into a full campaign. Figure out how things work. It's just like anything else. You want to get your feet wet before you commit to your big passion project, right? And make that clear to your players. Make it clear, like, okay, I'm gonna try some things out. Come in with a character that you don't really care very much about, and we're gonna do a little test to see how we like this system, if we enjoy the game at all, if we even like playing tabletop games together. And if you do, then you can turn it into a big campaign, or start a new one, or whatever works best for your group. Just plan on low commitment early on. I think that's important.
Yeah. There are also tons and tons of other systems out there that are like low rules, really dense rules. Like, you don't have to commit to one of the big three of the TTRPG world. There are tons of other systems that are very good that might suit your needs a lot better.
Wait, what's
the third one?
Yeah, is it Shadowrun or is it Powered by the Apocalypse? What are you talking? What's number 3?
I was thinking Shadowrun. Shadowrun, PF2, and D&D, I think, would be the top 3 that people would jump to.
That's fair. I feel like it would have gone World of Darkness, but that might just be because our server talks about World of Darkness a lot.
I hear a lot about Call of Cthulhu too. Which
true.
Call of Cthulhu is up there too.
Yep.
If you want another one that I want to try.
If you want recommendations on what game to play, check out our Discord. You'll find 40 people who all have different opinions that they're very passionate about.
Yeah.
We will argue.
You will get no information. You will just get more options.
You sure will.
All accurate. No one's going to help you. Everyone's just going to soapbox.
Yep.
Yep.
The important thing that you need to keep in the back of your mind as we soapbox is that all of the people who defend 5e are not playing 5e. They're playing 5e that they have bastardized for 4 years because of how bad 5e is.
This guy. this fucking guy.
Meanwhile, we couldn't even get through one campaign of PF2 without bastardizing it.
That's true. Well, for the
We
record,
couldn't
that
even
was...
start a campaign of BF2 without bastardizing it.
You are
Yeah.
not wrong. You are not wrong at all. Although, for what it's worth, I would have done it. I just don't think I could convince all of you to do it.
Accurate.
Zixa.
Me?
Yeah, it's your turn.
Okay. I'm going to ask a question to benefit myself.
Do it.
Because, as I've mentioned, Age of Awakening is like wrapping up and I'm starting to do world building for the new campaign, and I had a question for you guys, which is when you begin world building for a new campaign, do you start macro, as in like gods and continents and deep lore, or micro, like the town your PCs are starting in and the opening adventure and NPCs and stuff?
Love that. And it's straight first.
Straight
Because
first.
clockwise.
Cool.
Yeah.
It kind of depends on like where I'm getting the inspiration from, I think.
Yeah.
For Wake of the Fallen Moon, that was very at least some of the initial like world building setup was very heavily inspired by Thunderbolt fantasy.
Yep.
Which is part of the reason that we've got so much like anime and Asian like themed stuff going on.
Yeah. Especially like feudal conflicts and houses and whatnot.
Yeah. And because of that, I think I started with a world map because I knew that I wanted to have these like two nations that were divided by something. And then, and then from there, I just kind of like started to flesh out like thematically what I wanted all these different kind of nations and countries to kind of have flavor-wise so that I could have enough diversity that I felt like I wouldn't get bored with it.
Absolutely. I buy that. I'm definitely in the same boat where it kind of depends, not necessarily like on the inspiration, but like what is currently inspiring me. I work in chunks. I bounce around a lot. Anybody who has known anything about me for the past 10 years understands that I bounce around a lot. I fixate really hard on one thing for a short time, and then I burn out and I jump to something else. And when that comes to D&D and DMing and prepping and world building, what that means is that I'll spend a couple of weeks honing in real hard on macro. I'll build out the entire world map. I'll split up empires and nations and what are their primary conflicts. And then I'll kind of flesh that out as much as I can before I kind of burn out on it. And then like, okay, I'm going to jump to this one conflict that one of the players has presented to me, and I'm going to figure out everything that's going on there. Who are the three key characters involved in that? What are their secrets? What are their motives? And I just jump around. And I am a firm believer that people will always do their best work if they're doing what sounds fun at the time. And I think that applies to world building too. And, you know, when you get to the other end, you do still have to have a campaign for your players to play. But if you try to bounce around enough that you're able to get a presentable story and give yourself enough time to do that before the campaign actually starts, that's my take. That's my take. Do a little bit of everything. Don't necessarily lock yourself into a top-down or bottom-up strategy if that doesn't work for you. Be flexible.
I think I largely do that too. Like, the main thing for me is I do like so much of when I world build is done like after I get the characters and like build the story, build the world to suit the story that we want to tell. But like, I also feel like to make a good like D&D character, you need enough information about the world to build a character into it.
Yeah.
Like it can't be a totally blank slate. So I do enough macro scale world building to be like, magic in this world works this way, and these few things are important to know about this world.
Yes.
But then that's it. That's all I do until I get some character ideas, and that's what I start building off of in terms of building. I start from the top down, but then I like stop and go down to the ground and build up to the top that I built earlier.
Right. Very similar process. At least for Wild Folk, I did almost exactly what you said. I had like, here are 7 core concepts and conflicts happening in the world that you can maybe latch onto if you feel like it. And then I sat back and I waited for people to submit character ideas. I'm like, okay, cool, this person has this going on, it matches well with this, but it means that we need these 2 countries and this conflict, and it's a back and forth process. It's very much a collaborative storytelling thing even before the campaign begins. And I think that some of that like setup is just as important as what happens during the session.
Totally agree.
Oh, it's back to me, isn't it?
It sure
It
is.
is.
Damn, there's only 3 of us. It goes so fast. I'm unprepared.
Did you consider preparing at all? Just kidding, I didn't prepare at all.
I definitely didn't. Man, there is the landmine. I don't know if it's time for the landmine yet. We'll save that one. Somebody else can handle that.
I'm curious which one is the landmine in here.
Oh, the AI art one is the landmine for sure.
Oh yeah, well, that one. I'm happy to
You'll follow that
happy
one.
to address that one anytime you'd like.
Oh, we'll get to it soon. I'm actually very curious to hear your take because obviously Drake and I are both artists and probably have stronger opinions on this than you do.
You're not going to be surprised by my take.
No, of course not. There's a boy. Okay, this isn't the question, but there's a really good XKCD strip that came out like I don't know a couple years ago about geologists trying to guess how much geology knowledge the average person has and like dramatically overestimating it. And I think that's like a really important thing to remember in all things, including AI art. The average Joe doesn't know all of the intricacies and the conflicts and the issues. They're just like, oh, cool, robots can make art now. So I'm curious to see what the average Joe thinks about AI art.
I'll just do the question since we've already started talking
No,
about it.
no. Absolutely not.
We're already kind of deep into it. We might as well stay on topic.
Alright, fine, let's fucking go. The question is from Anonymous. For those DMs who aren't fantastic artists, what do you suggest they do regarding character art, NPCs, custom enemies, and maps? Which, on its own, great question. We can talk about Incarnate and a bunch of other shit later. But the landmine is, do you think AI art is acceptable, and are there conditions where is or isn't especially?
And I get to go first?
You get to go first, which I think is actually probably for the best.
Yeah, because I'm going to need a minute.
So just doing my vocal warm-ups here.
Uh-huh.
Guys, there's nothing wrong with AI art. Allow me to be very clear.
Uh-huh.
I don't know anything about art, and I don't know anything about AI art. What I know is that I am among the 99.99% of people that are going to engage with AI art because it is a cool tool that is available to them. And
Right.
no one gives one flying fuck about whether it's ethical or not. It exists. I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah.
So I will say, like, I am, as person who has artists in my life, I have a little bit more, like, I don't know, exposure to why there even would be a question about this. Like,
Right.
like 99% of people wouldn't. Why?
They're not
like,
even
why are
thinking
you?
about
Why are you asking this? Of course, it's cool.
Yeah.
I understand that. I don't know. Here's my thing. I'm trying to run a D&D campaign, and I can't do art. So my options are like A, don't have art, which is not a real option. B, steal people's art. I don't have enough money to pay for it, so it'd be just like grabbing people's art off the internet
Right.
and using it without permission.
Which is what DMs already do anyway. That's the alternative.
Right. Or C, use a tool that is available to me to create art that I can't afford to commission.
Yeah, it's a
And
no-brainer.
I can't conceive of one single reason why I wouldn't just do that.
Yeah, it's the obvious choice.
So that's-
Because it's deeply unethical and morally reprehensible.
Right. Drake, go for it.
I guess.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Most people
Here.
haven't even heard this. Yeah.
All right. So, oh god, what's the actual question here? Before I jump into my AI brand.
The first half of the question, which is honestly kind of a fun lowball, is what do you do for art if you're not an artist? Where do you get assets? What do you do for maps and tokens and stuff?
I guess I could actually answer that question since all I did was talk about AI.
True.
Incarnate is an incredible asset for making maps. You don't have to have any
Yes.
talent to do it. It's easy. It's user-friendly. It's so
Agreed.
cool. Highly recommend Incarnate. Look it up. It's great. Use it.
That's what we're
That
using for Wild Folk and for Wake.
That covers maps. That gets you covered there. If you want art for NPCs and other stuff like that, you can either completely go broke paying for it for characters that your players will look at for 5 seconds and
Yep.
then never engage with again.
Yep.
Or you can just steal images off or Google Images or like Pinterest or whatever, which is what I've been doing for years with Age of Awakening. Is just like going into Google Images and typing like Kobold Artificer, finding one that looks kind of like what I have in mind, and making a token of it. Or you can just use AI art to generate a perfect image of what you have in mind.
Right. Perfect. A little strong, but
Not perfect. Not perfect at all. Let me
Not
be
yet.
very clear. Not perfect. But
Give
it will
it a few
be in
years,
a
yeah.
very short matter of time.
All right, Trey, tell us why this is wrong.
Okay. So first of all, obviously, Incarnate's great. Also, it's not necessarily the prettiest thing, but if you need NPC tokens and things, you can make models on Hero Forge pretty easily.
True.
That is true. I've done that a
Yeah.
couple times actually. Cam's token was a Hero Forge model.
Yeah, it's pretty good, and there are several other producers of like minis and things that you can do the same thing on. I can't remember the names of the other ones, but I know they're out there. On the topic of AI art is terrible. It's reprehensible. It is made off of the backs of hundreds of thousands of people who were not compensated or did not agree to it.
Correct.
It's morally reprehensible, and anyone who uses it can go fuck themselves. That being said, if you're using it for your private game, go ahead. You
Right.
weren't going to pay for the art anyways. You're already scum. But no, like, as long as you're using it privately in your home game, I think it's a fine use of it. Just don't go posting it online.
Oh,
or
yeah.
pretending. Like, first of all, you shouldn't post AI art online anyways. But definitely don't post it online and be like, look at this NPC I made. Because you didn't.
No, yeah.
You typed a couple of words into Google and you got a thing.
Oh, God.
Hard to
So-
agree with that. As a major advocate for using AI art, definitely don't present it as art that you made.
See, if you're a reasonable person, are you an artist?
Absolutely not.
Cool. What a
Clearly-
valid and
clearly-
normal take for a reasonable person to have.
Clearly disclose that if what you're going to use is AI art, that it is AI art. Put a fucking disclaimer that says this is all AI generated art.
Yeah.
Also, I like how this dude is like, I understand if you can't afford $200 to buy the D&D books, but if you choose to use a service that is free to you to get something that is important to you, you're a piece of shit.
True.
Yeah. Because it's only free because people weren't compensated for it.
Well, what he's saying is the people who wrote Mr. Jeremy Crawford, who we all love so much, isn't being compensated when you go to 5e tools.
Yeah, but I already bought all the books.
That's a fair take.
I just use it because it's in a more convenient layout for me,
Yeah.
rather than me sifting through 3 dozen books.
Right. Yeah, that's actually kind of true for me too. I've bought almost all of the books that I use, but
Yeah.
fuck the idea of pulling from a paper book in the middle of a game. Are you kidding me?
Oh yeah, out of
No
the question.
way.
I did that for like half
Also,
of my
my monster
first
manual
campaign.
is falling apart, so
There's no way. Yeah, okay, so let's be very clear here. There's a trait that has been true of almost every character that I've played, because it's true of me. I'm a firm believer that there's no such thing as an evil tool, only evil ways to develop and subsequently use those tools. And AI is one of them for sure. The fact that most AI art programs are unethically trained on scraped art from tens of thousands of artists who didn't consent and were not compensated is fucking wild. That is gross. That's disgusting. And for that matter, I think that is like really, really, really gross. With that said, there are programs that are trained ethically. There are a few models out there that have been trained only on like willing artists who hopefully were compensated well, but at the very least they were consenting and compensated. And I don't see any sort of like ethical dilemma there. As long as you're doing your training ethically, the only remaining question is, okay, now we're displacing an artist who could have drawn that instead. And that is still a very real issue, but I've been saying for 20 years that, like, the ultimate point of technology is to put ourselves out of a job. It sucks that we're doing it for art first instead of, like, taking the garbage out. I really wish we were using it to solve those problems first, but we're working on it. Boston's working on actual physical meat space robots. In the meantime, I look at it very much like the famous like piracy stance that Valve and Gabe Newell had back in, it was like the mid-2000s or whatever. The people who are using AI art tools, especially for a private D&D home game to generate tokens, we're never going to pay a nickel for a real artist to draw real art for their tokens. That's not on the cards for them. There's no business being lost because they were never going to hire an artist in the first place. It's just a non-issue. You're not losing. There's no competition. It's not quite the two cakes problem, but it's very close to the Valve piracy problem. You are not losing a customer because they were never going to be a customer to begin with. The downside of AI are the people whose jobs are actually being displaced, the environment artists, the concept artists, stuff like that. That's shitty. And I wish
It's
we
also
had...
just the inevitable wave of the future, though, and trying to fight it is pissing into the wind.
No, big agree there. Even if you hate it, and I kind of do, it's futile to fight against it. It is happening whether you want it to or not.
Right. I'm fully amicable to the idea that like people who are training and designing these AI generation programs should like do so in an ethical way. Hard agree with all of that.
Oh yeah.
But what I don't agree with is like passing the responsibility for that down to the end user. Like, I don't fucking know how this shit is made, and I just shouldn't be held responsible for that.
Weird.
there should be some like legislation done to prevent like the people creating these things from doing so in an unethical way.
Oh yeah,
And they're
blaming the end user for AI art being unethical is like blaming people for not recycling for climate change. When like corporations are responsible for 95% of it. It's like it's not my fucking fault. My plastic straw isn't what caused climate change. It's
the tankers, it's the planes. Yeah, it is. We've opened the can of worms of like, can you be an ethical consumer under capitalism? We're literally on that topic. It's like, are you responsible for informing yourself about every step of the supply chain leading to the hamburger that you eat? And I think that most people would say, yeah, probably if you want to really get nitpicky, but who's got the time to do that much research on everything that they do in their daily life? It's hard. Even if you know that maybe you should, I'm just trying to play some D&D, man. Like, that's not everybody can research every aspect of their life like that.
Absolutely.
With that said, try to use AI art models that are traced ethically. I know that Adobe's is. I know that Midjourney is not. Do not use, like, if you can avoid it, don't use Midjourney. Midjourney is a shit company run by pieces of shit.
Is Adobe's ethical?
According to their website, anyway. And, Adobe is... they could be lying, but they're a big enough company that I generally accept that they don't lie except for marketing speak. They tell half-truths, but they explicitly said, yeah, we trained this on our own data. I don't know if that's actually true. The point of this is that if you have the time to do research and you feel like being an activist, maybe find a model that is trained ethically and stick to that one instead. Also, since it's my turn to finally answer this question, I'm going to jump to the first half. Consider picking up a little pencil. Consider making dumb little stick figures. When I started doing art, it was because I needed little bits of art, and it was hard to find what I needed on the internet, so I literally was just like, oh, I'll draw some stick figures instead. And now, 10 years later, apparently I'm doing that for a living. Like, you can learn. This is how art accidentally happens. If you've got the time for it.
I'm not going to do that.
No.
I'm absolutely not going to do that. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to... Here's what I will say. I will confess that I have done absolutely no research into ethical versus non-ethically generated AI art, and that is a failing of mine, and I will, address that. But telling people not to use AI art not to use it at all is just flat insanity, regressive nonsense.
Pissing into the wind. I would agree with. Like, you're never going to win that fight. Even if you have a moral high ground, you're just never going to win the fight. It's how things are going to be. It's like trying to tell people not to, eat meat or drive cars. Like, sure, you might have a point, but you're pissing into the wind.
Well, I think we spent 60 seconds answering the question and 15 minutes debating AI art.
I mean, that was kind of the question, though.
It was kind of the question.
The question was, do you think AI art is acceptable? We got to it.
Yeah. Oh, that was actually in the question? I thought you editorialized that part.
No, I did not. That is in the question.
Okay, great. Perfect.
Yeah.
We did it.
We did it. Are there any conditions where... no, I think we covered it. I think we covered it pretty good. We talked about maps. We talked about tokens. Oh, Dre, what's the... GameIcons.net. GameIcons.net is like 10,000
Yeah.
black and white icons that are awesome for, like, if you're not an artist and you just need tokens, you can find a little token of a witch. It's wonderful. I highly recommend it. We use that for Drake's very first campaign, which is an amazing campaign that I look back on fondly all the time, because ultimately the art quality of your D&D campaign doesn't fucking matter.
I'm still using
Real
those
easy to say for the incredible art quality of the campaigns. That you run.
I mean it though.
I'm still using those for Wake.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
Mooks and general enemies. I use those.
The art quality. Or go ahead, sir.
Because I don't got fucking time to draw every goddamn NPC. I'm not crazy like Feck. I'm not making all these tokens.
Yeah, the art quality of your campaign might matter if you're streaming for an audience and you care about them. But like, if you're just playing a home game, I promise you, your players, like, they're going to see cool art and be like, oh, cool art. That's not what they're going to remember. I don't look back on the campaigns that I played with each of you, the Mustard campaign and the Feckery campaign, and be like, oh man, that campaign had some cool art. Like, it was an afterthought. It's so trivial and unimportant to how much fun you're having in a D&D campaign. Use some GameIcons.net. Silly black and white tokens. It's fine. I don't care. I care that there is a map. I want to be able to see where my character is standing. It can just be MS Paint scribbles on a grid. That's all it has to be.
I couldn't disagree with this in stronger terms.
That's crazy to me that the Narn artist thinks that the art matters and the artist doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying. I think both of you as artists are like desensitized to how like immaculate and important and impressive your art is. Like, I think you're so deep in it that I don't think you understand how important it is.
Oh man!
I don't think you can see the forest for the trees from where you guys are sitting.
I don't know.
I don't think so. When I was running my first campaign, a lot of my maps, literally, they were just scribbles on Roll20.
Yeah. That's how early, like, what was before Land of the New Fire? That was mostly just like MS Paint scribbles. Crosswinds, I did that weird, like, pixelated style, and that's when I started, like, oh, I should maybe care about what my art looks like. And frankly, a lot of the time, I think, even today in Wildfolk, I'm like, I shouldn't be doing all this work on art. They don't care. Like, it's not that important. They're not here to see my pretty maps and my pretty tokens.
I care so much. I really, like, I don't mean to undermine you, but like both in Crosswinds and fucking Wildfolk.
Damn.
The art is so important. It's so important.
Huh. It's why
it's the difference between being like it makes me feel so much more immersed.
Wild.
I'm not saying that it doesn't make a difference, but I'm saying that you could. It's not gonna break your game.
Sure. No, absolutely, and like you can absolutely run a good D&D game without any art. Like I've done 2 campaigns of it.
Oh, also, there's like 17 million cool Patreons that for like $1 a month you can get cool battle maps.
True. 2-minute tabletop does great stuff.
Yep.
Hell yeah! I actually just bought a big giant pack for them the other day for of like 1900 stuff for next campaign.
Yeah.
Nice.
Same is true for hey. Since we're having a talk, let me tell you what is important. I might sit here and say like, oh, my art doesn't matter, my maps don't matter. Let me tell you what has been the best purchase I've ever made in my entire life. Fucking $10 a month to have music like that I can stream and license and boy, go sign up for, what are we using? We're using, it doesn't matter. Go find a royalty-free music site and pay $10 a month for as much music as you want to have. It's so good. It helps so much.
Yeah, the music has been incredible in Wildfolk, and like I will say that like if you're, it might be one of the biggest tips I would give to a DM, even running a home game or whatever, is like take a little time to curate a little music for your scenes. If you're planning to run a home game, play whatever you want. You don't about royalty free or anything.
Yeah.
And like having the right music to set the mood for a scene is huge.
It's
huge,
so
huge,
big.
huge.
I'm so bad at music. I just don't do it.
It's okay.
I'm so fucking good at it.
I was gonna say, I just do it for you. Zeke is very good at music in the campaigns.
Zeke's very good.
Yep, true. Oh my god, I'm catching up on Stream Chat, and you're not the only one who's like, oh yeah, the art's super important. Apparently, Drake and I are kind of the oddballs here.
But again, you're the artist. I'm heavily convinced.
Well, no, I think it's because they're the viewers. They have they aren't like immersed in the same way as the players are. What I'm saying is the players I'm wrong, of course, because you're telling me to my face that I'm wrong. But my understanding was that the players don't really care about the art quality. They're just there to be immersed in the story and the world and what's going on. Because that's how it was for me when I was a player. I didn't care about the art.
Let me
You might be right,
break
'cause-
up this hot take.
Let's hear it.
I think that the thing that is important is player immersion.
Yes,
And what we find immersive
is different.
going to be different.
I like that take a lot.
And also, importantly, as a DM, just to throw out some DM advice, you don't have to be perfect at everything.
Oh my
Find
god.
the thing you're really good at, and you can coast on that.
True.
Zeke's very good at music, puts a lot of time into music. That helps add a lot of immersion for everyone except for me, because I can't hear any of it ever. But for the rest of the table, it's very good. Feck has a lot of really cool art, especially for wild folk. All of the fucking stupid alternate costumes are wonderful and extremely charming. That pulls people in.
Hell yeah. Play to your strengths.
Yeah. For me, I've been making NPC headshots because that's what helps me get more immersed DMing, and also hopefully for all the players.
Yeah, you beat me to it. Your strength has always been like really good NPCs that I am very attached to and want to like have conversations with and develop and stuff like that.
Totally agree. I will sadly admit that I have not had I'm not like caught up on any of the Drake campaigns, but I've watched episodes where I've had time to in between things, and that's always the standout thing to me, is how like rich and engaging and like real the NPCs feel.
Right.
Oh.
Anyway,
Drake's up.
Whose fucking question is it?
Is it my turn?
It was me. I technically asked the AI one.
Okay.
It's because we're going counterclockwise with asking, clockwise with answering.
Yep.
There's a lot of really good questions in here. I hadn't looked at it in a while.
I know there were a couple of questions that I thought would be like good segue questions after all of our ranting just now, but
Yeah, some softballs in here.
yeah, let's get some fun questions in here. I'm sure that we've already answered this before, but let's do it again. What's your source of inspiration?
Oh boy. So like, okay, I'm gonna give two incredibly cliche answers. The first one is music. A lot of the time when I'm like plotting a scene or planning something, it's usually because I've been listening to something that like fits that scene or that narrative or what I'm trying to tell there. And that is when I'm doing something that is like me generated, right? It's when I'm preparing an NPC scene or some big event that's going to happen to the player. But more than that, and I this sounds trite, but it's completely true. It's the players and what they have done recently and what they have told me on the side, like, oh, I hope this happens, or I don't hope this happens. I'm very, very motivated by what the players are bringing to the table and to the story. I think of the three of us, it's fair to say that I probably bring the least amount of desire to tell my own story and the most amount of desire to have the players tell me a story. And that is very evident in like when I'm prepping. I'm like, okay, these players have brought these angles and these plots. How can I throw a little wrench in that and make that plot more pertinent, but not necessarily like add my own story to it? How can I squeeze that rock is usually my angle when I'm doing prep, especially story related prep.
I touched on this a little bit earlier, but just to say it again, because it's definitely my answer to this question as far as like what is my inspiration as a DM. It's actual play for sure, and some of that is like the people here at this table. Like Beck is a huge amount of inspiration to me as a DM. Drake is a huge amount of inspiration to me as a DM. But watching Dimension 20 shows and listening to Worlds Beyond Number and Critical Role and stuff, like that's all my inspiration. Like other I've taken like a probably truly crazy amount of actual play and it's for sure my biggest inspiration as a DM.
Hell yeah.
I like anime.
Hell yeah. If anybody has ever watched a Drake campaign, that is the truest answer that Drake has ever given to anything.
Yeah. Recently, One Piece has been a ridiculous amount of inspiration for me, because I've just finished binging all of that. Now I have to wait for episodes like a fucking troglodyte. Like it's the fucking 90s again. It's terrible. But no, genuinely, I don't recommend anyone watch One Piece at all. But if you do, boy, what a delightfully good like source of inspiration for how to tell a story and also how to just really not do pacing.
Right.
Just what a cautionary tale and a source of inspiration all at the same time.
The two of your answers combined have reminded me that I am a terrible person, and that there is actually a secret third thing that motivates me, possibly more than anything else, and that is the competitive spirit. When I see another DM running a D&D game, or when I'm playing in a D&D game, I'm like, oh, I wonder how I could do this. I wonder like if I could take a different take on this. That's what drives me more than anything else. I have to win. You know this about me. This is my defining trait. I have to win.
Absolutely. All right.
What other source of inspiration do I have? Actual plays also, like League. They're great.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, but recently, this is not really like a general thing, but been working on developing for my next campaign, and it's going to be in like an early 1900s kind of setting in terms of like the tech level, and just watching shows like set in that era, little like Peaky Blinders and stuff. It's been just swell for like getting in the mindset for that. So if you've got like a show or a movie or something that is the vibe that you're looking for, just, engage yourself in that.
Yeah. All right. I think Zeke is up.
Me?
Yep.
Oh boy, oh boy. Hold on now, I had a question marked in here, now I gotta find it again.
Oh yeah, I gotta mark off the one we just did. Where is it?
Yeah, it's 58.
58. Are you guys able to edit this?
Nope.
Yeah, we can.
I can't.
You
What?
can't? Well, I guess you're not as cool as
You're
me.
not as cool as us.
Well, it's weird because I was able to edit it once and then now I can't.
There you go. You should be able to edit now.
Cool.
Okay. This is a question from our dear friend Kobold. How do you feel about characters that are not made for combat, but for asking questions and learning and checking on stuff? How do you enable such a player to have fun? I love this question because it's Jane.
I have to answer this. No, Drake has to answer this first. I'm curious if his answer is my answer.
I think you let them suffer with their choices. Genuinely, like if they don't want to be good at combat, that's fine. That means that they're probably just not interested in doing combat, and so when combat happens, they can check out for a little bit, and then when combat isn't happening, they get to take spotlight. Like that's how it goes.
Yeah, I big agree. I have many things to say about this, but ultimately I agree. I think that if somebody makes a character who is meant to be bad at combat and good at other things, and you like try to rubber band that, you try to be like, oh, but they need to be good at combat, so I'm going to give them this and this and this. I'm going to set up all of these encounters so that they are good at combat. Then what about the players who were trying to be good at combat? Like they dedicated their character to being good at combat, and now Jane is as good at combat as them. Like that doesn't feel great. Let people choose what they want to be good and bad at, and respect that and play that out. Like maybe even emphasize it, challenge it, put them in scenarios where they are unable to do something they want to do because they're bad at fighting and they must rely on other people to do the fighting for them. And I will also see as a secondary answer to this, some systems are better at this than others. 5e and PF2 are both systems where it is expected that everyone is good at combat. They are combat simulator games where if you have 4 class levels, you're as good at fighting as everyone else. Hypothetically, we know that's not actually true, especially but that's another conversation. There are systems out there where combat is not such a driving force of the game, and we recently did like a little 3-shot in World of Darkness. And in World of Darkness, you can make a character who doesn't fight. They have invested all of their skills into being social or being rich or having connections or these other things. And when combat happens, they hide, they run, and if the monster gets them, they die. And it's a very different playstyle, but honestly, I enjoyed it a lot. I think I would enjoy a system like that if it was just a little more granular and fleshed out. Like, I think that's a cool approach to playing tabletop RPGs. And if you find yourself with a lot of players who are like, oh, I want to make a character who's not good at fighting, consider one of those other systems. Take a look around, see if maybe D&D is not the right game for you. Pathfinder is not the right game for you.
I agree with all that. The games are like combat simulators essentially, but like I will say it doesn't have to entirely be about like focusing on what they're not good at, like just letting them suffer in combat or finding people to fight for them. Those things are good too, but like find ways to make their skills shine, but like give them opportunities to do the things that they do want to be good at. Like, and as a DM, it can be really rewarding. Like, if you've got a character in your campaign that loves soaking up the lore and reading books and trying to find all the information they can about your world, like that's great. It's terrific. It's rewarding. Let them do that, and find ways to give your players the opportunity to do the things that they want to do.
Yes, for sure. Is it me again already?
It's you, yeah.
It's so fast. Okay. Oh, we have new questions at the end. Let's see. Oh, okay. I'm going to ask this one because it's a thing that I'm bad at, and I'd love to hear other people's answers to. This one is from Reddington. Something I've always had trouble with while DMing is describing things in a way that doesn't feel flat. Any tips on adding fluff and detail to room and environment descriptions to help with immersion?
It's me.
No, Zeke.
Or yeah, we answer clockwise. Okay.
Answer clockwise.
So, I think I'm in the minority between the three of us here on this. I do a lot of like writing, like scripting stuff out in advance, and I've had to be really deliberate about getting away from doing that to an extent for like dialogue and social encounters, because it shoehorns me into wanting to make sure the conversation goes the way I had written. But as far as like the question, especially like describing a room or describing a setting, like write it out in advance.
Absolutely.
You don't always have to improvise that stuff. You'll do a better. You won't forget things if you write it out. And as far as like I've been writing for a long time, so it comes kind of naturally to me. But like as far as adding detail to a room or environment, like focus on like 5 senses. What does the room smell like? What are the characters hear? What do they see? What's the lighting like? Is the air heavy? Is it little details like that aren't that may or may not be pertinent. They both like keep your characters engaged in like seeing the scene, theater of the mind, and like engaging with it and immersing in it. But it also gives them like things to poke at as D&D players. If you say the room has a stale smell to it and it's not lit very well, and there's rubble all over the floor, things that you might have just said to make the room feel thoroughly described and real. One of your players is going to be like, oh, what is that smell? Do I know what that smell is? Does it smell familiar to me? And it gives you an opportunity either to have some red herrings in the room, or red herrings where it's like they're trying to find out what matters here and what doesn't.
Right.
Or to, maybe you improvise a detail there. Maybe that smell does mean something now, or maybe you can find a way to make that smell lead to whatever you were hiding in this room. So little details, put little that might seem innocuous and aren't related to anything details. Things that don't have anything to do with anything make the setting feel more real.
Yeah.
Because if you describe a room and you only describe the things that have to do with your plot, like if players walk into a room and you say like the room's 10 by 10 and there's a door on the other side with blood smeared on it,
Right.
it's like, okay, well, we know what matters here now.
Yeah. Or like there's a red candle sitting on the shelf. Like, oh, that candle must be important.
Right, exactly.
You beat me to it, the verisimilitude, but I'm gonna let Drake answer.
Yeah, I was literally gonna kind of play off of exactly what Zeke said.
Yep.
But specifically, I was gonna say there's the 5-4-3-2-1 method for like grounding yourself if you're having a panic attack or if you're stressed out is essentially also a good way to just describe something. You pick out things that you can see, and then things that the players can touch, then things they can hear, and then things they can smell, and then presumably if there's anything they can taste.
Hell yeah.
Just play off the senses. You'll find that the more you start to think about trying to fit a description for each sense, you'll start to think about the rooms in more unique ways, and you'll just kind of start to naturally come up with more interesting and compelling ways to describe things.
Hell yeah. Okay, there's going to be survivorship bias here. I understand that, but I have to ask before I answer. How obvious is it when you guys come across something that I've written in advance? It's like super obvious, right?
When it's written down, yeah.
Fair.
I wouldn't, I don't know. I think I can always tell. I don't know if I would jump right to super obvious. It doesn't, like, it's not jarring. It doesn't like, oh, he's reading from a script now.
Right.
But I can tell when that is happening, but it doesn't feel out of place, I'll say.
For sure. And I didn't even bring it up, and like, I don't think it's a detrimental thing, even if your players can tell. There's like a mentality that's very important in tabletop games where you're not railroading. It's not a scripted thing. The DM's job is not to tell the story. It is to facilitate a story. And so there's kind of like a taboo to, I'm going to pre-write this scene. But I got to tell you, cutscenes are fucking awesome. Memories, dreams, fucking awesome. It's so nice to be able to just be like, okay, I can prepare this. I can do a good time here. I can write down a few paragraphs and just read off a script for a little while. And it's really helpful, especially when you're trying to paint something important, to have the prep time and to be able to like know what you're going to do ahead of time. But that's also a luxury that A, you're not always going to have, and B, you should be willing to break if one of your players suddenly wants to interact with the scene. The five senses thing is good. I usually go by urgency. And what I mean by that is like when I imagine that I'm the character walking into the scene. They open the door, and I think, what is the first thing that stands out to them? What catches their attention first? And then I work down the line. I'm like, this is the first thing they notice. This is the second thing. This is the third thing. And usually that's like, oh, this is the biggest thing in the room. This is the strongest smell in the room. It kind of hits all the same buttons, but I think of it, instead of checking a list of senses, it is, what would these characters notice first in order as they notice them? And that includes things that are not plot relevant. It includes things that are just there because they're there. And that helps a lot with verisimilitude. This idea that if you get in the habit of always providing a full and complete picture, then they don't start picking out, oh, he mentioned a candle this time for some reason, it must be important. You can kind of make the world feel more, I don't even know if alive is the right word, but more fair, more objective, if you include things that are not necessarily important, but they would be prominent, they would be noticed.
That's interesting. The like urgency thing. I don't think I really do that, but I've now, like, I'm seeing in retrospect now that you definitely do that. That is an interesting way to do it.
Yeah. Urgency is a big part, and I typically, when I'm like having trouble and I'm like, oh god, what do I do? I wasn't expecting this. I do the urgency trick, but I do it like character by character. What would Ruko notice first in this room? What would Jane notice first in this room? What would Kaz notice first in this room? And that not only kind of helps paint the picture and give me a checklist that I can run through when I'm panicking, but it also kind of immediately gives each character something to latch onto, even if I don't say their name out loud. Like if I say, oh, there's a dusty bookshelf that's got a weird yellow rock on it, I'm like, oh, cool, Jane's going to go over there and do something with it.
As a player, too, I also like, I guess I'm just a freak show, but I like, the thing that I like to do in a scene like that is specifically engage with the shit that I can tell doesn't matter.
Hell yeah.
Which I don't know, like when we walk into a room and you're like, it's really hot in this room, and that's clearly not related to anything. You're just mentioning it because it's hot outside. That's always the first thing as a player that I want to engage
Yeah.
with. Like, man, it's hot in here.
And you get so much story out of that too. There was a thread like 2 or 3, or go ahead, you go first. I talked a lot.
Okay. No, you're good. I just wanted to throw in a like small cautionary tale. If you're DMing, also it's important to throw in like the fluff and flavor stuff. But if you want your players to engage with one specific thing, don't give them a bunch of stuff in a room because they will not look at the thing that you need them to look at.
For sure, for sure.
Man, just torture yourself like I do. I'm a little freak show, as I just mentioned. But as a DM, I love presenting all kinds of innocuous details and also specifically burying the important thing in those details for no reason.
It's fun for like 10 minutes, and then once it gets past that,
I delight in it, but that might be because I enjoy torturing my players so much.
You guys ready to do the yellow paint discourse?
What's this?
Oh man. Oh, so okay. We're not actually going to do the full yellow paint discourse. The idea is that video game development and design has quickly discovered a universal truth about humanity, which is that people are stupid and they will miss things that seem obvious to you because it's not where they're looking. It's not where they're used to looking. And the reason it's called the yellow paint discourse is because a lot of modern games, if there's something that you're supposed to do, but they think you're not going to do it naturally, they'll splash yellow paint on it so that you look over there and do the thing. Especially popular on like ladders and climbable walls that you might not interact with right away.
Yeah. Resident Evil, Portal.
Yep.
All those games.
And frankly, this is a fascinating topic that I highly recommend. Game design is an incredible psychological experiment. And the truth is, it's not that people are stupid, it's that what you think is obvious is not actually obvious to the normal average person. It's easier for you to see what you put there than for them to see what you put there and recognize that it is special or pertinent or important. All of that aside, what I like to do is introduce the important thing as part of a larger collection. But when you dump a bunch of players into a room with a bunch of things, one of them is going to make a check. 2 of them are maybe going to make checks. Let them kind of decide, oh, this is how they're investigating the room. And eventually, one of them will stumble into some sort of a good roll that you can use to justify, like, oh, on that really good investigation check, they would probably notice this thing over here that, nobody else has picked up on yet. And this kind of plays into a big philosophy I have of your job as a DM is never to create solutions. Your job is to create problems and let the players figure out how they solve it. And if that is with somebody coming over to smell the candles, well, sure, that's how they solve this problem. That's how this scene will begin to unfurl. That's how they'll stumble across the first clue.
Unless, of course, instead of creating a problem and no solution, you create like a game of Sudoku or whatever and just make your players solve it out of character. Not that I'm salty.
Boy. There's got to be at least one question about things you've done wrong as a DM. Boy.
Yeah, I think there was one.
I'm sure there's probably at least one.
There's nothing, let me be very clear, there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. It's just, I hate it.
Oh, yeah. And to be clear,
people that love it.
That's what makes it hard, is there are 2 or 3 people among my players who love puzzles, and I'm like, okay, cool, I'll give them a puzzle from time to time. My solution to that is I try to introduce these puzzles as completely optional things that can happen in parallel to the rest of the game. But I still think there's sort of a, oh, somebody found a puzzle, we're all going to turn our brains off for 30 minutes. So I'm even more than what I did at the end of Crosswinds. I've learned, don't even present it as a puzzle. Just kind of slip it to the puzzle people on the side and then immediately tell the others to keep going. Who's up? Is it me? No, I just did a thing. What did I do?
So you just asked that question, and because the questions are counterclockwise, it is now Trade's turn. I'm very proud of us for actually maintaining this order for a whole hour.
Yeah, we're doing
I don't think we did. I think we fucked it up a couple times. Because I definitely answered after Beck asked a question a couple times.
Shit. Oh, well.
Well, I was proud of us.
We're all fired.
God, where's the shame question? I know it was in here somewhere.
A shame question.
Oh, I remember the one, some shit you fucked up as a DM.
Yeah.
Oh, there's
Which
so
is not
many
exactly
for me.
how it's phrased. I bet you never messed anything up.
True.
There it is. Could any or all of you explain a time where you as the DM made a big mistake that affected the game and players and what you learned from the experience? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, that's the one.
I found it for you.
Thank you.
What number is it?
You're welcome. It's number 82 by Luis.
Oh, that's way down here.
Oh yeah.
Sick. So wait, Drade is asking that one.
I asked that one.
Boy, there's so many. There's so many. I think the knee-jerk, the big one that like looms in my mind is just the way that I handled world continuity in Crosswinds. I was trying to do a thing without really understanding how to do it, and I don't think that I handled it well. And I think, looking back, I enjoyed that campaign. I think that campaign was fine. I think it's best to treat that as an alt-universe standalone campaign and not a direct continuation to the first campaign. Because frankly, it has a lot of unsatisfying implications for the way that the first campaign ended, and I don't think that they were fun. I don't think those were good decisions.
Agreed.
Yeah, I know you do.
I was just about to say that I had no such experience, but I also, like, my engagement with the first campaign was extremely casual,
That's probably a big part of it, is my first campaign, I ran 2 separate alternate universes of it. There was the game that I ran online with Drake and Frisk and Philo and a bunch of other people, and then there was my home game that I ran with Zeke and Eli and a bunch of real-life friends. And the tonal difference between those two two different versions of the same campaign was wild. One was very like dramatic and serious, and the other was very slapstick and silly and, home game drinking the whole time. And then when Crosswinds came around, I took people out of each of those 2 groups, threw them together, and did sort of like a surprise. It's a continuation of that story. First mistake, don't ever do that. Nothing should be a surprise on that scale to your players. Talk to your players if you want to continue the old world. But also, surprise, it's like hundreds of years later, everyone is dead, your characters failed to stop it, and they're also kind of dead, and it was just not good. It was not a good way to continue that world. And so that's not how it happened. That was an alternate universe where everything was different.
It was fine. It was totally fine. Again, coming from the guy who was just... like, oh, neat, I see Topo again.
Ocarina of Time splits into 3 different timelines, kind of fine.
Yeah, truth. Real truth.
I can sympathize. Even, on the one hand, I do think it was fun, but if Fekri had been one of those, I would have been dissatisfied with that. And I think that was a big turning point for me as a DM, where I started to very regularly and deliberately, when I'm making a big decision, stop and think, if I was the player, and specifically, if this was X character that I love and care about, how would that make me feel as the player? And I have caught myself about to make a bunch of bad decisions since then by realizing, oh, if this happened to Fekri, I would be upset.
That makes sense. That's fair enough.
I should probably do that more.
What would you say you learned from that experience, Fek? Or have you kind of answered that?
I think I kind of did, is, ask yourself if you were the player, and not just if I was the player. That's nebulous. Stick a name in there, pick your favorite character, and say, if this was my character, how would that make me feel?
I buy that. That's intriguing. For me, I think it's something from Age of Awakening. The 2 probably biggest examples being Lush and Drate. To put it succinctly, not having a clear idea of where the direction they expected for their story, or the roles, even more so, the roles they expected certain NPCs and their backstories to play in their story.
Right.
I mean, the obvious example here being 18 with Dr. Dipple. I got, the backstory on 18, and I read it as very clearly this guy is a heinous villain, a terrible, terrible dude, and fleshed him out as such, and that was the role I had in mind him for the campaign. And very clearly 18 had Drade had very different ideas about who Dipple was going to be to 18. And
right.
The direction that story would go. And then likewise with Lush, maybe not as Mahadi to an extent, Israfel. Then I think Lush has enjoyed the way his story has gone. But all that to say that I think there's been a couple times that Lush has felt like his conception of what his story was going to be or what it is was like undermined by what I did.
Right.
And like I was 18, I think there's been, I mean, you could speak for yourself, Dre, but I feel like there's been some like disappointment that Dipple was who I made him and maybe not who you envisioned him as.
I don't even know if like undermining is the right word. It's just like you said at the very start of this, a different understanding, different interpretation of the initial pitch that was presented.
And that leads into like what I learned from this experience is like next campaign I'm going to be more transparent, because the thing, like, it wasn't accidental either. Like, I think walking into Age of Awakening, I still had this mindset very much of like, I want everything to be a surprise. There's no universe where I would talk to the players about the plans I have for their characters, and everything needs to be completely surprising. And I mean, I think you need some of that for a D&D campaign to be satisfying. But going to next campaign, I definitely will have like how comfortable are you with your expectations for who the NPCs in your backstory are being subverted, or like the direction you see your story going being subverted? Or do you want things to largely go in the direction that would lead you to the happy ending you envision for yourself?
Big agree. And that'll differ a lot from player to player too. Like some players are like, yeah man, fuck me up, like do whatever you want.
That's me.
Frisk notoriously are like, yeah dude, you do whatever you want with Jerry, you fuck up his backstory as much as I want. But then, like, you know, Lush came to me and said, here are some of these characters that I care about. He literally, with Wild Folk, said, with these particular characters, I don't want drama with these characters. These characters I want to be, like, you know, stable and in line with what I've told you about them. In other words, these are the drama off-limits characters, just kind of make them play nice. And I think that is a very good conversation to have with your players as you're setting up a story for them.
Yeah, and I think Lush telling you that, because I've talked to him about that too, was like born of this mistake that I'm talking about. Because like Israfel and Mahadi ended up being very drama-filled characters in his story that he was not expecting them to be, and we've talked about it at great length. So going into Wild Folk, he's like, I need to get some character. I need to have very clear expectations for who these characters are.
For sure.
So that's what I've learned. Is like next campaign, I will personally question each player about like how much subversion of expectations they're interested in.
Yeah. We're getting to Drake. We're skipping Drake's answer. We'll get to you very shortly. I just have to jump in. That, like, there's a little list of things that I collect for, these are questions I'm going to ask in my next campaign. And that is definitely one that I learned kind of halfway through Crosswinds. That's a big one. It's like, what do my characters expect? Or players expect for their background characters.
And it's a fine balance, because, like, even knowing what I know now, I wouldn't go back to the start of Age of Awakening and ask Drake, like, hey, is Dipple a villain? Like, I still don't think I would do that. I don't know, maybe I would.
I'm going to be careful. I'm not going to give spoilers. There are at least a couple characters in Wild Folk where I literally looked at the player and like, this sounds like they might be a bad guy. Is that how you see them? And I got an answer for them. And that was like very informative for me to know, am I just interpreting this character wrong? Or do they understand that what they presented sounds like an evil character and will probably be an evil character?
Yeah. No, you're probably right. That probably is actually what I would, if I could go back in time, that probably is what I would do.
Right.
So ask that question.
Yeah, when I wrote him, I honestly was kind of expecting Dipple to be a dick too.
Well, that's good.
So, I think my initial... So I built 18 very strangely, just because I knew that our gameplay situation was going to be a little weird and nebulous and didn't really know what to expect. So when I initially made 18, I was like, well, I'll just throw some shit at the wall and he'll be really like neutral and robotic, so he'll be easily like puppeted if need be and all that.
Right.
And I think in my initial, like, 18 went through several iterations in my mind, and at least a couple of them he was like, yeah, this weird situation that he was in is definitely going to be like evil and monstrous.
Right.
And then as we started playing, I was like, you know, it would be nice to have some other NPCs in there, and like the rest of the experiments, maybe it was like friends or family with them and that sort of thing. And the relationship started to shift in my mind a little bit.
Right.
But I'd already like kind of written it in a way that was a little bit nebulous, I guess, and it was just like, well, it is what it is.
Right.
See what happens.
And the part of it too is like, and this is a big thing that I've learned as a DM, is like, I was very married to my perception of Dipple as I had sort of written him in the pre-campaign before it ever started. So like, fourth session in, I present all this information because Odell rolls really good history check about how this guy was like doing all these experiments on children and super unethical and ousted from the conclave and blah 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 blah. And as time went on, I think I started to realize that you had a very different idea of what 18's childhood was like and what Dipple was like. But I was like, well, we're in too deep now. This is who he is.
Right.
And it didn't need to be. There was no like, things could have been reworked. I hadn't married myself to anything like, it's not like you guys had met him or found anything concrete that would make that the case. So
I still totally get that though. The like changing things, even things that the players haven't seen yet, is terrifying because you're always like, oh, but I've hinted at things and like this might make some evidence change that they found. I worry about that a lot, which is why for the most part, I try not to change anything, even if my players like make changes or, if they guess the plot ahead of time, I'm like, cool, they figured it out. I don't make changes because then I might mess things up.
Dude, I'd live for that shit.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Dumb with Feck. I'm like, no.
Oh, consistency is so important to me.
So one of my very favorite mystery series in the world is Umineko, and that the entire like concept of that series is essentially the idea of like this kind of Schrodinger's cat situation where until the players actually see the end result, anything that you were hinting at, you can kind of reinterpret it.
Oh boy.
As long as you were maintaining consistency, which, can be hard, especially if you get like really deep, but especially early on, like it's pretty fucking easy to like pull one over.
Right.
Yeah, it depends on how much you've committed to. And I guess that's my point is with Dipple, I for sure could have pulled that ripcord no problem and just didn't because I was like, nah, I already know who this guy is and I'm married to it. But, lesson learned.
I feel like if I knew in advance that I was going to do a Schrodinger's thing, I could like, I would prep that. I would say, oh, every time I reveal a piece of evidence, I'm going to be actively conscious that it could be either of these two dudes at the end. But if I wasn't planning for that the whole time, there's no way. It would stress me out as a DM that I was saying the wrong things. And if I was the player in that scenario and I learned that was happening behind the scenes, I would be like, oh, so none of our sleuthing actually like matters at all. Like we're just going to get to the end and decide who it was all along. And I need that consistency. I need that objectivity.
All right, so we know Drake's never made a mistake, so we can just move to the next question, right?
Correct.
All right, that was the whole. That's what this question was about.
Yep.
Biggest one was when I tried really hard to shoehorn in a weird metaverse story into fucking train campaign.
Iron Dragon Trail.
Thank you.
Just so you know, that is one of only 2 episodes of Iron Dragon Trail I watched. I watched the first one and that one.
Boy, what a terrible episode for you to jump in on.
I think I feel the same way about that Zeke does about Crosswinds, where like, I thought it was fine. I thought it was like, I first of all kind of already saw it coming a little bit.
So first of all, it was not fine. I spent a lot of time on it. And then I learned Vocaloid shit. I worked with Risk to get music for it and dumb shit like that. And then everybody thought I was having a panic attack and wanted to quit DMing and everything was terrible. The thing that I learned about that is you should make big swings as a DM. It's fun. It's enjoyable. Don't swing that big.
If I can temper that, ease into it a little. Big swings are great, but maybe not totally out of the blue. It's easier to like hint at it ahead of like all sins can be forgiven if they are foreshadowed strongly enough. That is the thing I've said a million times before. You can make any mistake that you want if you foreshadowed it. And your players picked up on the foreshadowing.
I will say that ever since we started Wake, I have not made a single mistake.
True. It's been actually
It's my
perfect.
magnum opus.
I'm pretty convinced. You know how, like, movie trilogies have their pattern. Although even that is not true. I'm a big believer that the second movie is usually the best in a trilogy. But when it comes to D&D campaigns, I think 3 is the magic number. Because 1, you don't know what you're doing. 2, you think you know what you're doing, and you do not know what you're doing. And 3 is where you're like, oh, I don't have any idea what I'm doing. I'm going to relax, and I'm going to take it slow and learn from my mistakes. And maybe I'll get to the end of 3 and be like, boy, that was just as bad. I hope 4 is better. But right now, I feel like 3 is the comfort zone. I think that's where you figure your shit out.
I'm really excited for my 3.
Same. I can't wait.
Real excited.
So it's Zeke's question now.
Oh, it's my question.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, gang, too much fun. You know, it was just submitted seconds ago, and I'm going to ask it because this is something that I'm not good at. What are good ways to get better at improvised content that you didn't plan for when your party just completely catches you off guard? From Retro, which is I think my biggest weakness as a DM. So I'm curious to hear you guys' answers. Dre just did this shit to me the other day.
Oh.
Shadowfell motherfucker.
For me, one of the very first things that I was doing when I started DMing was doing sort of a West Marches-y campaign. But this was back at a time when I didn't prep shit. I wasn't a good DM. I didn't do any of that. We just got together on the weekends and hung out and
hell yeah,
yelled at each other for 12 hours. But genuinely, one of the best things that I did during that campaign, and I don't know, it's not necessarily the best D&D, but essentially, because it was all just kind of like one-off adventures, there were several sessions when I would come to the table with literally nothing prepped.
Yeah.
And I would ask each player a different question, and they would essentially fill in the blanks, kind of Mad Lib style, about some rumors that they had heard, and then on the spot I would put together an adventure for them.
Dude, that's how the fucking Desert Library thing started, and that was one of my favorite arcs. It was so good.
Yeah.
My heart rate is probably like 140. Just
so essentially,
just
what
hearing that story.
I wish I could remember all the questions. I'm sure I have them written down somewhere.
I probably do, yeah.
Essentially, they were things like one person would give me like a description of a location, so it'd be like a library or something, and then somebody else would give me like what kind of treasure or thing is in there that you're interested in, and it'd be like
knowledge,
treasure, a magic weapon, knowledge, whatever. And then somebody would tell me like who made the place or who's residing there currently. And yeah, they would just flesh out a little adventure based on like rumors that their individual characters had heard about this place. And then I would just like ad-lib in a little dungeon. And that was, again, to jump back on the art topic, because I wasn't prepping any of this, I didn't have pretty maps. I would just doodle a little box room, add some pillars and stuff on Roll20 and go from there.
And it was sick.
I'd pick out random monsters out of the monster manual and run them. It was good.
I love the way that we play D&D right now today. It's great. This like sort of overarching narrative campaign style that has been popularized, especially with the advent of Critical Role and actual plays. I think it's great. What you just described is, in my opinion, the more pure and distilled and platonic ideal of playing a TTRPG, where it is almost entirely ad hoc and improv and ad-lib. I think that it is phenomenal. I think that is a great way to play this game, and it also is easier to run. If all of the players, DMs and players, are coming into it with the understanding that we're going to be making some shit up, that just nobody has, the expectations are lower. Everybody's there to just kind of see where the dice take them instead of seeing what story you have for them. And boy, the expectations are so much lower, and the fun is so much higher, and the stress is so much lower. I love it. I live for that shit. Every time that the players put me into a scenario that I was not expecting, that's why I come to the table. The least fun parts of DMing for me are slogging through the stuff that I have prepared. I'm eager to get to the end and be like, okay, that's all that I have for you. I've presented you with the problem. Surprise me. Tell me what you're doing. Start improving. Make me improv. Make me... And to answer the question, how do you handle that? You just understand your world. You know how the characters that you presented will act. You figure out what their motives are. You figure out what they want out of the scenario, and you have them react accordingly. And sometimes that means that, like, everybody plays nice and there's no fight, and you just have a nice little picnic and a cool, like, tavern scene. And sometimes that means that the entire city is now after them, then they're wanted criminals. Like, that's the fun for me, is not knowing how it's going to go and waiting to see where the improv takes you.
You guys are fucking crazy.
To actually answer this question in a meaningful sense, practice.
That too, yeah. Absolutely.
That's what I was about to say, is like, as a person who, this is not what I'm good at, it is one of my, like, I've learned, I was about to say it's one of my favorite parts of D&D, but that's not really true. I've, like, learned to love it over time, but I did not at all for a long time.
Yeah,
and yeah,
boy, the Shadowfell shit that you improv'd made me cry for
it's so
48
great.
hours.
Like I said, I've learned to love it. That was still the wildest shit I've ever improvised. But, like, what I will say is basically just agreeing with Drake. Like, practice and experience are the only way. Like, you just do it enough times, and you kind of, if you're anything like me, will get to, like, a zen space where you just don't worry about where it's going. Like, I'm a huge, like,
Yes.
prepper and a huge type A, and, like, super, like I've talked about before, like, really married to my prep and married to my, like, the story we're trying to tell. And, and when you get to that improv space, it's just, you gotta just, like, follow it. Don't fight it. Just like, do the thing that they're doing. And, like, you're not going to get yourself somewhere that you can't storytell out of. So just follow it.
I want to emphasize that because it's so important. You said a thing where don't worry about where it's going, and that is so true. When you are improving, your thought should be not, oh, where is this going to take the story, but the character that I'm playing right now, what do they want? What would they do if I was in their shoes right now? Because you're playing that character. You're not playing the storyteller. You are playing a few characters in this world who are pitted against the other characters. And in the back of your mind should be, oh, they're probably going to lose if there's a conflict because that's how this game works. But you should do what they would do. They are trying to get whatever their motives are. Whatever their motivation is, they should chase it. And if you're the Raven Queen, that means, oh, I want a new angel and I want to, like, get this weird undead creature off. Like, just do what the character would do. That's the cheat code. Don't worry about where the story is going. Worry about the characters that you are currently controlling. That's all there is to it.
That said, it is really difficult to do that. It's not easy, and it comes only with a great deal of practice and experience, I think. Like,
for sure.
2 years ago, I would have absolutely bungled that scene with the Raven Queen, because it's hard to, like, in real time think, what does this character want? What are their motivations? And what do they do because of it? So that just comes with experience and practice, I think.
Yeah, that's fair.
Also, don't completely shun the overarching story.
No, fuck it.
You do need to consider where this is going.
Hell no.
Your job as the DM is also to keep the story going. You have to be aware and conscious of, like, how do you keep this going if X goes wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And you should let the X go wrong, but boy,
I agree.
TPK.
I agree with Trait wholeheartedly, and, like, we'll say, like, even just use that most recent example, the Raven Queen stuff, which I think is some of, like, the craziest and best stuff I've ever improvised. That scene looks very different if it happens earlier in the campaign, and I don't have the meta knowledge that we're close to the finish.
Right.
Like, I don't do that scene if it's going to derail a campaign. Even though the motivations are the same and everything is the same, it's like you have to kind of honor where you're at in the campaign, I think, and, like, where you're at in the story.
I think we've hit an ideological split. I think I just straight up disagree on ideological grounds with both of you. I think that if what the Raven Queen would do in that scenario is smite him dead, then that's what she should have done. And if that means that that character is dead now, that's how consequences work. That's how a tabletop RPG works.
I care more about the story than about the realistic consequences, though.
So my argument to that is, if the reaction is unrealistic, the story suffers.
Yeah, but there's a gradient there. There's, you can find a point that is not unrealistic, but also is not,
Okay, yeah, there's a middle
doesn't
ground.
derail everything.
Right, and also, like, by that standard, why didn't Lucian kill me?
Okay, yeah, that's
Or
fair.
why isn't Sun dead?
Wait, why isn't Sun dead? Oh,
Yeah.
well, Sun's not dead because we were doing a playtest and I didn't want to, like, stop in the middle of the session.
Right, like, context is important, and
Okay,
there are
yeah,
points
yeah.
when you should honor the situation more than necessarily what actually is happening.
That's fair. That's fair. I do think, boy, Okay, we've clearly found that I have a price. We're just negotiating at this point. Because I was going to say that if it was a real campaign, Sun would have died, but that's not true. Like, you're a level 1. I think I would put a grace period for a level 1 character, and I frankly did with Tex, although that was kind of a scripted cutscene anyway. But, like, you're right, that there is eventually a point where the training wheels come off. We're just negotiating on price at this point. And I think that my price point is much farther towards the let shit happen side of the spectrum, but it is still on the same spectrum as you guys.
We did it. We won, Drake.
We did it.
Who's up?
Now let's get him.
We fucking got him.
Let's get him to admit Pathfinder sucks.
No,
It does.
Pathfinder. Oh, I'll give you a little bit. I'll give you a little taste. Pathfinder's not perfect. The only thing I think I can really stick to my guns on is that Pathfinder is better than 5e, and I would rather not spend 3 years trying to bandage 5e. But I don't think PF2 is a perfect system.
You could just do like me and spend 3 years bandaging 5.
Yeah, no, I don't want to do that anymore. The whole reason that I dislike 5e is because it puts so much work on the DM, and that's exactly what I'm trying to get away from. I want to focus on the story and the session and the planning content instead of trying to make the ramshack system behave for 5 minutes. Who's up? Whose question is it?
I think I asked that one, which makes it Feck's
It's
question.
me. Okay. Ugh, boy. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Lesser known system. We already talked about World of Darkness a little bit. Trade magic. Spot. Oh, here we go. I'm going to do this one because this is another thing that I think is pertinent and important for me that I'm still figuring out. What is your approach to spotlighting your players equally so that everybody gets a chance to shine?
Uh-oh, I gotta do this first.
You do.
All right. Boy, is it tough.
Yeah, it sure is.
And like, really the biggest thing it comes down to is like knowing your players and knowing who even like wants the spotlight and how much of it.
Yeah.
So much of it is just like chemistry, like interpersonally between the people at the table. Like I've got, players at my table that are happy to sit there for 6 hours and not say much and just kind of show up when they're turn to combat and they're having fun and like, just let them do that if it's what they want to do.
Absolutely.
But that said, you also might have people at your table that are just like kind of quiet and shy and afraid to speak up, but they would like to have the spotlight. So I don't know. It's kind of a wishy-washy answer, but I think that is the biggest thing is like know your players, know which ones of your players are the quiet ones that would like the spotlight and can't get it themselves. Know which ones are the ones that are kind of, whether intentionally or not, kind of the spotlight hogs, the ones that always have something to say and tend to like talk over other people or whatever.
Right. And
specifically call on the players that are kind of on the quieter side. And more than just like, you can just be like, hey, what's your guy doing right now? But more specifically, like use something that their character is good at in the world. Give them problems that only they can fix.
Yes.
So like, if your quiet guy is has a spell that you need to get through this situation, whatever. Remind him he's got that spell if he's not realizing it. So stuff like that, just like call on the skills of the players that you want to have the spotlight, and make sure that the encounters and challenges and stuff that you're developing give everyone the opportunity to use the things that they want to use.
Right.
Another thing that I like to do too, and I guess this is kind of adjacent to spotlighting, or maybe goes with spotlighting, is don't be afraid to like ask your players if they're okay with this sort of thing to narrate what they're like thinking or what they're feeling. Even if their character doesn't say anything, just be like, what's running through your guy's mind right now? And sometimes that can be a good way to get a character even that is quiet into a scene.
Abria and Brennan both did that a lot, and I thought that was very cool.
Yeah. Me next?
Yep.
Yeah, kind of thing Zeke said. Big thing is just chemistry, learning your players, which can take a long time, frankly. You can play with people for, hell, I've been playing with our group for years, and I feel like still learning what people actually want. And more importantly, we're playing what is essentially improv, and every time we start up a new campaign, people are playing drastically different characters a lot of the time. So their mood and how they interact is going to shift a lot. Just yesterday, broke out, all of my teeth are gold, which is a sentence I never would have expected out of his mouth in any context.
I truly died.
I always forget that you didn't get to like actually see Mustard. You've only seen like weird shit that I've posted on the internet, and not who Mustard actually was.
Yeah, I saw Mustard for like that one very brief time that I was guested, which was hardly anything.
Yeah.
And anytime I've DM'd for you, like, you've played fairly reasonable characters, like
Feckery and Jupe, and not Mustard.
Yeah.
Boy, I miss Mustard sometimes. He was so much fun.
So yeah, just learning not only your players, but also learning the characters that they are playing and how to best take advantage of the character they're trying to embody to either pull out or get them to, like, become a bit more reserved in situations if they are being too boisterous.
Yeah.
And ultimately, just talk to people. After a session, just ask, like, hey, do you want more spotlight? Are you feeling, like, left out or anything? And
absolutely
see how people are feeling.
Honestly, maybe even the hotter take. Like, I sometimes feel like spotlighting comes down more to the players than it does to the DM.
Amen. I big agree. I was going to touch on that a little bit. This, I think, boy... I think it is like, tables are going to have different preferences, but I do think that at our tables, at least, we tend to put a lot of the responsibility for spotlight balance on the players, which is not always a great idea. I do think that maybe I need to do a better job of, like, stepping up and managing spotlight specifically. And I've been trying to do that more, especially in Wild Folk, because we have too many fucking players. But yeah, if you're a player, you can help with this, is I guess the best way to put it. Even if it's not your job to help with this, you can help with this. And it'll make people like you more. One of the most useful pieces of advice that I was ever given for playing, not for DMing, is that people like characters who dig into their characters. The best thing that you can do to make the other players be like, oh wow, I really like your character, is if your character goes around and interacts with their character. You pull them into scenes. You make them talk. You ask them about their questions. People love to talk about themselves, but only if somebody else is asking. Be the player who goes to the other players and yanks them into a scene. Especially the ones who have a hard time getting into the scene themselves. That's such a huge and simple thing that you can do that is entirely selfish. It will make other people like you more. It's great. It's awesome. It's a cool trick that everybody loves. When I'm DMing, I mostly agree with everything else that's been said, but there were also, there was a note about, like, give problems that only a specific player can solve. That's hard to do because it's the nature of tabletop games that any character can probably solve any problem, especially if they're a spellcaster in 5th edition. What you can do, though, is give a specific character a problem that they need solved, and that they have to solve the problem by either going to somebody else or figuring it out on their own. So take your quiet characters, the one that needs spotlight time, and instead of giving them the key, give them the lock. Make them have a struggle that they're dealing with, because then no matter what happens and who solves it, they're still part of that spotlight. They're the ones that are facing a problem right now. And that's a thing that I've been doing for like episode by episode prep, is at the top of like the episode 16 notes, I write down each character's name that's involved in that episode, and I'm like, okay, what is a thing that's going to happen to them this session? What is a problem they're going to face this session? And sometimes there are just sessions where like, oh, this character just did a lot and they don't really need anything. They can have a cooldown session. But I typically try to make sure that in each episode, like, each character has at least a problem that comes up that they have to deal with. Or not necessarily even like a big adventuring problem, but like a moral dilemma or a tough conversation or something where they have 10 minutes that are just about them dealing with something.
Yeah.
You should follow Effect's advice here.
Wait, follow my advice?
Yeah.
Don't ever do that. Why would anyone ever do that?
Under no circumstances should anyone follow any of our advice.
You guys should ignore everything that we say. Who's up? I asked that one, right? Yeah, because I answered it last.
Yeah.
Which means it's straight.
That's me.
While he's looking, I'm just going to stress one more time, not all of your players want the spotlight. Some people like to just show up and relax and chime in 2 or 3 times a session, and you know what? That's great. We all know who those players are, and we love to have you.
How would you each characterize your style of GMing? What do you try to ensure happens at the table?
Okay, it's me first. I think, and this is hypocritical, I understand that I'm not necessarily great at doing this all the time, but what I aspire for, above all else, is player control, player agency, and player contribution to the story. I like to think that I present problems, and I sit back and watch and see what the players do and where they take those problems. I'm very much a hands-off style DM. And that doesn't mean that I don't do any work coming into it. It just means that all the work that I do is limited to a very small bubble of things that I control. And I very deliberately don't plan outside of my bubble.
I don't know how to even characterize my own. It's very much, I don't know, character-centric in terms of I don't really care about the world itself or the setting. The whole campaign is just about the characters as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. It's very character drama.
Yeah, very character drama and very drama. I sure do love feelings.
Boy, you know.
I love making my players feel feelings. That's my richest delight as a DM, is engaging my players' feelings.
Hell yeah.
I think I would put myself somewhere kind of between Seek and Feck. I like character drama, but I also enjoy some world settings. And I do just love me a good combat and boss fight.
Hell yeah. I love
to me,
encounters in combat.
I think that's the big difference between me and you guys, is it's also so clear to me over the years that I'm playing the incorrect system, but I don't really care about combat. I know I got to do it because the system is all about it, but
you should actually check out other systems for real. You should
Yeah.
check out World of Darkness.
I'm not going to do that.
I had so much fun with World of Darkness, and I would love to play in it.
I understand, but I'm just not going to do it. I'm just gonna
You'll
keep
spend
running.
3 years trying to fix 5e instead.
You don't understand how
Trying to
deep I am
strip
already.
combat out of 5e.
It's not like the thing is like it's not even that I don't like want it to be in there. I understand that it's important as a player. I love it. I need it as a player, so I know that my players also want it and love it and need it.
Oh yeah, I love
I just-
combat.
As a DM, I'm just like, can someone else come do this?
Yeah.
I don't care about the combat.
Did we all answer that?
Yeah.
We should segue that straight into how do you make combat fun, which was another question from a long, long time ago. Wait, whose question? It's Zeke's question. You do whatever you want, and I'll do that one
Great.
next.
I'll ask that question.
No!
And it's I'll even put my little stank on it. How do I make, as a DM, how do I make combat fun for the players? And B, how do I make it fun for me?
Yeah. Okay, traits first.
Okay. Oh boy. I think diversity is one of the big ones. Making sure that all of your combats have something kind of unique about either the environment or some kind of a weird mechanic that causes the players to kind of change how they think and interact with what's happening. For a lot of people, this is going to be like if you have a big spider encounter, you add a bunch of web patches that the players can get stuck in, and then have, add a roper to the combat so that the roper is pulling people into the webs and getting them stuck. Yeah, just adding different kind of like almost like mini games into the combat.
Yes.
Helps. And you can do that in a bunch of different ways, whether that's with environmental effects or using weird monsters. One of the things that I've been doing a lot is I'll take a monster or a stat block. Like in Wake, there was a point where they had to go and save somebody from being hung at this tree. And one of the effects that I had was I literally just took a roper stat block and I attached it to the tree, stripped out the hit points, and essentially just used its grapple mechanic to have these like ropes that would come down and start strangling people. And it just helped add like a little bit of a dynamic thing for people to do. They could spend time cutting the ropes, and if they didn't, then people were getting grabbed and pulled around, and just kind of helped shake up the battlefield.
Okay.
Which is also very good if you have a combat where they have to protect somebody.
True. Okay, I have to lead with, not every combat's gonna be a winner. That's fine. Sometimes you're just gonna drop 5 wolves in and they're gonna fight, and it's gonna be a little boring, and that's fine. It's okay. Not every combat has to be a winner.
Boy, that's the best advice anyone could ever give.
That's true of literally everything you do as a DM. Not every day is going to be a winner. Some of your sessions are going to be worse than others. That's a fact of life, and that's fine. Everybody's having a good time anyway.
I've never run a bad session.
But let me tell you how to make a great combat. Trust me, I know. There are so many secrets. I could talk about this for hours, but some of the quick ones. First of all, compounding stress points. And what I mean by that is no fight should ever just be one fight. It should be 2 fights at the same time, or a fight at the same time as some other problem. Classic example from Crosswinds is when you guys were in the Knoll Tower as it was being destroyed. There were a bunch of gnolls in there that you were fighting, but also the tower's collapsing. 2 things at the same time. That's the very basic 101. Take your combat and shake it up. Make something else bad happen at the exact same time. This is, in my opinion, the role of traps. This is what they try to do with traps. The idea of a trap is not, oh, you step on it and you take 10 points of damage and the healer loses some mana. Fucking boring, William. The point of a trap is somebody steps on a trap and a combat starts as the trap is activating and going off. So now you have to deal with the combat and deal with the trap at the same time. The trap doesn't have to be a trap. It can be a tower falling. It can be a forest fire. It can be a mudslide. It can be anything. It can be 2 fights at the same time. Maybe you're fighting a dragon at the same time that you're fighting skeletons. And, they are not working together. Doesn't matter. The point is your fight should have two things going on, at least two things going on. There's a limit. It can get too confusing, but you'll learn as you go. Number 2, environment. You have to... The arena matters so much. Use space. Use the shape of the environment. Force them into small, tight spaces. Force them into big, open spaces. Force them into places where they have to move or be aware of their surroundings. And importantly, make sure that anything that is dangerous to them is dangerous to their enemies too, because that is so much fun, is using the environment against your enemies. It's great. Everybody loves that. And then the big one, this is my favorite, degrees of success. Optional objective. Anybody can stand there and beat 5 wolves, but can you stand there and beat 5 wolves while they're trying to attack 2, precious little NPCs that are tied to a tree? Make it so that there are optional goals, so that it's not just enough to win and kill all the enemies. They're trying to win fast enough, or win by not using magic, because magic makes a crystal explode. Give them optional goals that they can strive for, ways that they can go above and beyond just standing there and swinging their sword until the monster dies.
Can I tack one other thing on?
Yes, do it.
Make the combat matter to somebody.
Yes.
Throw a loved one in the center of that combat.
Absolutely.
Throw a major villain or some important object that they have to defend. Anything that can add a little bit of, for lack of a better word, just stress onto somebody is good.
It also ties it to the story. Nobody cares about killing wolves, but they care about killing wolves if, there's a loved one in the tent that they're attacking, or if one of them has the MacGuffin that you need to save somebody or something like that.
It also makes it so much more satisfying if somebody actually dies. True. Nobody wants to have their character die fighting 5 wolves.
True.
But if they were die fighting 5 wolves who were about to eat a precious loved one, then that's at least a little bit more narratively satisfying.
Yeah. And you don't always have to push it to... You know what Hey, you guys remember 3 weeks ago when you guys were up on a mountain fighting a bunch of air elementals, but there was one cute elemental and it caused 2 of the entire party members to stop fighting intelligently because they wanted to save the cute elemental? That's exactly what I'm talking about. You literally just have to dangle any optional objective in front of your characters, and somebody will latch onto it and try to go above and beyond, and it will complicate the fight in a way that makes it more stressful and more fun.
There's truly absolutely nothing I could add to what was just said. You guys covered it all. That's all totally. I am not as good at this as both of you are, so mad respect to both of you as a player in your campaigns. Always engaging.
Yep.
Still learning.
For sure.
But yeah, I think alternate win conditions is a big one. Something besides just whoever runs out of hit points first loses is always good.
Yeah, and be this plays back into let what happens. Let them fail these optional objectives. Let the boss get away with the loved one. That's a whole new story. Be prepared to introduce consequences that can actually have consequences. That is the heart and soul of tabletop RPGs. Don't count on them to win or lose anything. Let there be let yourself be surprised. Let yourself understand, oh, I don't know what's going to happen at the end of this fight. Let's find out together. That's the whole point of playing these games.
Let the treasure fall into the lava.
Yeah, exactly. Also, Blizzard is a terrible company full of terrible people that have made terrible choices. Boy, do they know how to design boss fights. Go play some Blizzard games.
That's the last thing I'll add, is change up your enemy composition.
Yes.
Have fights where you have just a boss and a couple of mooks, and then have a fight with a bunch of real weak enemies. You want to let everybody have kind of moments to shine, and it's nice to have a wizard be able to cast fireball and fucking nuke a army of skeletons. And likewise, it's nice to have a big boss for the fighter to just wail the shit out of.
Hell yeah.
Or the rogue to come up and sneak attack.
To kind of tack onto that, the point of a dungeon is to foreshadow the boss. Every element of your dungeon should be introducing a mechanic in your boss fight. And then when they get to the boss fight, this is that same purple goo. We got to do the same thing that we did for that trap back there. Love that shit. Crib that straight from Blizzard. That's good game design stolen from Blizzard. Introduce mechanics throughout your dungeon. Bring them all back for the boss fight. Oh my god, it's me again, isn't it?
Sure is, because I asked your question, sucker.
Shit.
This little gramophone is just the coolest.
I'm glad you like it.
I love it.
I had to look up what those light bulbs are called, and I've already forgotten. But they're so cool. They're so wonderful.
Edison bulbs?
No, they might be called Edison bulbs, but I think it's no, that's not what I found the other night when I was looking for it. They had a different name, but that might be another name for them. Here we go. I'm lowballing it because I'm still deciding on an important one. What happens when your players roll really bad the entire session? What do you do? We all know my answer.
Yeah, you just let them.
You let them fail.
You gotta
Yeah.
honor the dice. This
we
goes
all
back to like
feel the same way.
the improv question too. Like, you gotta just honor the dice rolls.
Fuck yeah,
Like,
dude.
That's the best way to get to. That's a big thing that I've found. To go on a little bit of a tangent about the improv thing again. When you get yourself in an improv situation and you're not prepped for it, and you feel uncomfortable with that as a new DM or a seasoned DM like me, still uncomfortable with those situations, you got to just honor the dice. Like, just roll dice about it. My dear brother Elijah and my dear essentially brother-in-law Lush, for Christmas got me a dice tower that says "roll dice about it" on the front, and I don't think that they meant like. I think it was just a silly thing. I don't think they meant anything by it. But it sits in front of me now as like a mantra for me as a DM. Like, I as a person who gets too attached to my prep and my stories, that's just a nice reminder sometimes. Just roll dice about it. You gotta honor the dice rolls. And if your players are rolling shitty dice all day, you just resolve what the dice roll did, and you just do it.
Amen. Big agree.
Can I do a couple of tangents?
Yeah, do it.
Okay, so first of all, as a DM, you don't have to roll dice about it all the time. So hear me out.
Do it.
It is okay as a DM to have moments where you are just doing a cutscene, where there's a narrative where you have reached a point where the villain just needs to monologue to get some information out. And it is okay as a DM to be like, this is that story moment. We're going to do it.
Big agree.
Yeah, I big agree.
However, if you are doing a cutscene at any point and you let any dice hit the table, you have to honor them.
We're going to go back to making mistakes. This is a mistake I made in episode 2 of Wild Folk. The text jumping on the roof was meant to be a cutscene. I had him roll dice, which tells him it's not a cutscene. I shouldn't have had him roll any dice. I should have just had him fall.
I have made the same mistake. It feels really shitty as a player. It feels bad as a DM. Don't do it.
Yep.
Take that advice. It is very good and okay to do cutscenes, but you have to make it very explicit. And the second you're throwing dice around, it doesn't feel like a cutscene.
Right.
Until they roll dice about it, and then you don't honor those dice.
Right.
Hell yeah. There's a good piece of DMing advice that I've seen a few times too, and I think you have to temper it a little bit, is like, if there's a piece of information or a MacGuffin you need your players to find for the story to continue as a DM, like, or whatever it is, an NPC you need them to meet to progress the story, because don't lock that shit behind a dice roll.
Oh yeah.
Don't put it behind a dice roll. If you need your players to find it, don't put it behind a dice roll.
Yeah,
you can't do it.
They just find it.
Yeah,
it's fine.
This is where railroading is important. Like, if the whole story hinges on it, it cannot be locked behind a tube that they can close.
But then another thing, like, to counter my own advice there, and I think there's a fine line to walk, is like, if you can pitch a player a really softball dice roll for something they're very good at, and they get to find something critical to the story with their dice roll, that also feels good. So there's...
I can marry these two concepts. The idea is, it's okay to have critical pieces of information. It's not okay for them to need to find it at a specific time. Like, build your specific information in a way that it can sit quietly in the background until somebody rolls well, and that's when it comes out.
Yes, absolutely. That's a Brennan Lee Mulligan thing that he does so well in all his Dimension 20 shows, which by definition, by being like short form and pretty kind of railroady, there's things that just have to come out. I've watched him so many times, like, Ask one player for an Arcana check, they roll like shit. Ask the next player for an Insight check, they roll like shit. Ask the next player for another Insight check, and they roll well, and now he gets the information out. He's just waiting for somebody to roll well.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Who's up? Who did it?
I think it's
it's
straight.
great.
I
Yeah.
think it's me. We definitely answered a couple of these.
Yeah, we've definitely
So
answered a
there's-
few.
There's at least like 5 or 6 different versions of like, how do I get into DMing? Which is just do it.
Come up with problems, not answers.
Good one, because we're Zeke's doing a bunch of world building right now.
Yeah.
How do you treat magic in your worlds? Do you hand wave it as just magic, construct unified magical theories, or something else?
I was gonna ask that one, you jerk.
Too bad.
It sucks to be you. Should have gotten on it. Shouldn't have stolen Vex.
I did. This is almost immediate karma.
This one has changed for me over time, and I think it should change for you over time too. You should play to your comfort level. I love hard science, hard sci-fi, I should say, rather. I love systems that are internally consistent and well illustrated and like make sense and can be checked against. And that is harder to do. And so when I started out, I was very soft magic. Like, oh, a god did it. Oh, a wizard did it. And that's fine. And as long as you manage expectations, your players will be fine with that too. As I've gotten a little more comfortable, I have kind of found my stride. I've found this weird amalgamation of like the 4 classic schools of magic and also the sympathetic magic, the idea that like emotion ultimately becomes magical energy which distills into sapient life. Love that shit. It's kind of based in like animism and what are they called in like Eastern mythology? There were a couple that we found with Fulmine when he got attacked in the alchemy lab. What's the name for those little bastards?
Tsuko Megami.
Yeah, I love that shit. I love animism, and so I've started like steered towards that a little bit as I do world building and specifically magic. Is animism that doesn't always necessarily take on an anthropomorphic face. Sometimes it just crystallizes into energy that you can shape. So to answer the question is, make it as detailed as you think you can reasonably manage. The hard part is that the more you lean into hard magic and hard sci-fi, the more you have to really have it under control or it starts to break. And that is where hard sci-fi falls apart, is when you scrutinize it so hard that it breaks. It is always better to err on the side of soft sci-fi.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I've likewise gotten a little bit more hard magic-y lately. Still not as much as Feck. Feck, you've got an encyclopedia in your mind of all the like tiny interactions of how magic interacts with the weave and sympathy and blah blah blah. And
Right.
I just like to have essentially like 2 layers, like we've talked about before. If someone asks you one question and then asks you a follow-up question, you got to be able to answer them both. But that's about it. You don't need to write a physics textbook about how magic works in your world.
Sure.
Another thing that I do with magic that I'm at least going to do, and I think it's important, is another Brennan Lee Mulliganism where there's spell casting. There's 9 levels of spells and how they work and how much mana they take and such and such. And then there's like great workings of magic. There's like magic that takes place outside of like normal spellcasting rules, the way Pathfinder does like rituals. You get like there's a thing that in my first campaign I was very much just like loosey goosey. It's magic, it happens, cool, hand wave. And then my second campaign, it was like Age of Awakening most of the time so far, very married to the idea of like hard figuring out what magic can and can't do and having an encyclopedic knowledge of every spell in the game and how they could interact with each other. And more lately it's been like yeah, all that stuff exists. Spells exist. Any knowledgeable mage in the world is going to know how they all work. But there's also like things that magic can do that are outside of the normal run-of-the-mill spellcasting.
Right.
Spellcasting is one kind of magic, and then there's sort of great works of magic that are beyond that.
Hell yeah.
It can be, at least for me, it was like paralyzing to limit yourself to only being able to do the kind of magic that you can explain with a hard rule.
Oh yeah.
So allow yourself to just be like, yeah, yes, I have hard rules about magic, but also sometimes things just work because magic.
Absolutely. That, if I can spin off that briefly, that's a big, important world building tip in general. Never tell the players what the limits are. Always have a mysterious box on the side where like, oh, and over there be dragons. Whether that is like unexplained magic or a nation that they don't know about. Just always have a little box on the side full of things that you haven't explained yet.
This is the most wrong either of you have ever done. I can't believe this is the fight topic.
Wild. What's your take?
How you treat
Traits just like don't have magic.
no, how you treat magic is going to depend on what system you're playing.
True.
Like, at the end of the day, if your players are, if you have this hard magic system in your head, but you don't have a understanding of the system you're playing, and your players suddenly break out Wish.
Oh yeah.
Like, well, sorry.
Oh, I agree with this. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, totally.
So like,
definitely know the rules of the game you're playing.
Right.
when
Yeah.
you start.
like you need to build your magic system around the system that you are playing, or do what Zeke and I are doing, where you modify the magic to suit your world.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Absolutely. I have an actual fetish for when mechanics and story intertwine, when they are married. There's a cool word for that I learned a month ago and then immediately forgot. I'll go look it up.
But yeah, essentially, if you're doing some world building and you're just getting into like 5e or whatever system you're playing, really, chances are you probably don't have a super intimate knowledge of every single rule in the system and every single ability, and that's fine. Just don't have a hard magic system because you don't want to be surprised with that. It's okay to just kind of softball magic until you understand your system a bit better.
Big agree. It's like your players are never going to fault you for softballing magic. It's magic.
Also the word diegetic, apparently.
Diegetic is a different thing. Diegetic is like when the characters in the movie can hear the music because it's coming out of a radio in the world. Ludonarrative confluence, the idea that the story and the mechanics are like the same. That the characters had, like, for example, in 5th edition, if the wizard knows, oh, this is a 6th level spell and it takes 7 mana to cast, that is ludonarrative confluence. The idea that the mechanics exist. The mechanics exist diegetically. That's a good way to put it. If the mechanics exist diegetically, then you have ludonarrative confluence. Zeke's up, right? Because we stole his question?
It's true. My question was stolen straight from my hands.
Why don't you guys yell at each other for a bit, because I have to pee.
Good luck. Think of us.
Prying out of my cold, dead
I always
fingers. Oh boy. Oh gosh.
Oh golly.
Let's see if I can find a question for Drake specifically while
Yeah.
it's on. Question from Cash: how do you handle puzzles? Don't put them in your game; they're stupid. Next question.
Is that in here?
Just kidding.
Oh yeah, sure is. I see it. Yeah, 17.
I read the first 4 words of the question and didn't read the rest because I'm just shitting on puzzles. It's actually a good question.
The little side monologue that Nordo did, where while everybody else is solving the puzzle, still gets me every time.
Yeah, that's the one downside of Foundry I'm finding, is that you can't do the like slant E thing.
I think you can. I think it's just /me instead.
Is it?
I'll double check, but I'm almost positive.
Or like /me was Roll20. I think.
I'll double check. I'm pretty sure there's a way to do like /me emotes on Foundry.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't even matter. You can just describe what your character's doing in text without it just going in a special yellow box. But
Right.
the special yellow box was nice.
True.
Elijah says we can emote.
We can emote.
Allegedly.
Wait, Elijah?
Allegedly. Over in the Wild Folk chat.
That's Luis. That's not Elijah.
No, in like Wild Folk Telegram.
Oh.
Bruh.
Oh. Yeah, in Telegram. I got you.
But also Luis.
But also Luis in Twitch chat.
Also mainly. Okay, well, I had all this time to read a question and didn't.
Really just...
Here we go. This is kind of a little bit related to what we were just talking about, but I think it's different enough and kind of an interesting question too. From Kobold, what is your opinion about creating new spells for your game and giving them to specific enemies? Do you then be like, oh, that's his special thing, you can't have it, or this is only for the big boss, or do you let your players learn it, or at least try to learn it, etc.?
What a good question.
Is that me first?
It's you first.
Like all of my answers to everything in the existence of the world, it depends. I think that it can be very cool. I've done that for a handful of enemies in Wake. And I think depending on the balance and circumstance, then yeah, players being able to access it or learn from it, it can be kind of a cool, almost like a video gamey sort of thing where you beat the boss and then you take their power up, kind of a moment.
Yeah, Mega Man.
Yeah. We had that fairly early in Wake where the Mud Witch had a wall spell that I made, and
Sure.
I gave
Jupe can do that now.
people have access to it now. So
yeah. Because I have a fetish for ludonarrative confluence, I loathe the idea of encountering anything in the world that something else can do because it is not a PC that I cannot do just because I am a PC. With that said, I think it's very appropriate for an evil necromancer to have invented an evil ritual that they can only do because they are a demon from a specific plane of hell, and unless I happen to be a demon from that specific plane of hell who has this specific onyx wand, I can't do. Like, that's fine. But if I find human mage Joe Wizardson, and he has a spell in his spell book, and I am also human mage, like, I should be able to put that spell in my spell book unless there's a very good reason why I can't. So I'm very firmly in the camp that it is great to introduce new spells, but if you don't want your players to be able to use them, you should have a pretty compelling reason why that isn't just, oh, this isn't made for PCs.
Absolutely. And that kind of ties back in. The reason I thought it kind of related to the last question is the concept of like a great work of magic. If your villain has been performing a blood ritual every month for 7 years, and that's why he's able to do this, big fuck you ritual he's doing.
Yeah.
But, if it's just a spell in a spellbook, you're absolutely right. Be aware, as a DM, if you are a new DM especially, that absolutely everything that any of your monsters do, your players are going to be like, how do I get that? Like, if you ever describe your baddie as having a sword that does a cool effect, your players are going to take that sword afterward and be like, how do I get that cool effect?
Yeah. 100%.
So if you don't want your players to end up with your monster's incredible, powerful abilities in their hands, be careful how you describe them.
Don't is the answer. Don't describe them. Just say they take a lot of damage.
I have dug that hole for myself so many times as a DM because I get really into like describing exactly what the attacks look like and where they're coming from. And so many times I've accidentally been like, this robot, fucking hole in his Samus gun on his hand, blast this laser at you. And Lush 100 times out of 100 is like, cool, I'm going to take that off of him and figure out how to use it. And you have to honor it.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah. I'm firmly in the camp like, cool, go for it.
No, at the end of the fight, you say the blaster explodes.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what you do, depending on the thing. Because sometimes, too, like, you can't, like, if I have a monster that is like this legendary creature that is dealing just stupid damage per attack, you truly can't give it to your player. Because it deals stupid damage per attack. So you got to find some way to get, wiggle your way out of it.
So part of it is that, oh boy, I hate health and damage. I hate health and damage. They're the stupidest mechanics, and I hate that they're part of this game. But anyway, damage is like it represents a lot of things. The damage that a monster does with their weapon doesn't just represent how strong the weapon is, it is how good they are at using the weapon. I really like PF2's ABP, where your weapon damage just goes up automatically as you level up because you get better at using the weapon. That makes a lot of sense to me, rather than, oh, this sword always does 3d6 damage no matter who uses it. But also, remember back in Land of the New Fire where, oh my god, what was the artificer's name? Anyway, he had a gun with a dead man switch. That was my proudest moment as a DM. It's the greatest thing I've ever done. I essentially had a big bad enemy lieutenant dude who had a really cool gun that I knew the players couldn't have. And more importantly, the NPCs did not want that gun to fall in the wrong hands either. So it had a dead man switch and self-destructed when he let go of the gun. And sure enough, the players tried to pick up the gun immediately. As he died, they grabbed the gun and tossed it to another. And I had the card ready to go that says when the gun drops, there's a timer and then it explodes. And that was my proudest moment as a DM, when I ludo-narratively solved that problem.
I like it.
Yeah. Who's up? Did we all do that?
I think so.
I think we all did it.
Sure.
Oh yeah, it was the inventing spells. We kind of all did it. Yeah, we all did it. Who asked that? Was that Zeke?
It was me.
Shit, it's me.
Sure is.
Damn it. Okay, we're doing this one at the end. Another one from Cole. The short version of this question is, how do I feel about the way that you guys have reacted to Finn and Darbin? And I'm going to spin this out into a longer discussion about how I feel about NPCs in general. When we started playing in this campaign, one of the only requirements that I set to all of the players is your character needs a reason to at least temporarily go to an adventuring guild in search of help. And I knew that because of that, I needed to have an adventuring guild, and there should probably be some people there that they talk to that give them quests and such. And so I had a very loose template for these characters with 2 sentences of description each. And I kind of thought that they would take a couple of quests, do them, and eventually move on. And then 4 people latched onto them really, really hard. And this was A, a surprise to me, B, flattering, I enjoyed it. But it reminded me a lot of Elise and Crosswinds, because the exact same thing happened with Elise. I needed somebody that I could drop a little information with, and somebody that would serve as an ally on the initial 2 or 3 quests. And the players just latched on so hard to Elise, and I'm like, oh my god, I have a few notes on this character, but I don't have I wasn't ready for them to become basically a party member. And it was fun being able to kind of develop her after the fact. And the same thing has kind of happened with Finn and Darbin. The key difference with Finn and Darbin, though, which did not happen with Elise, is some of the players don't like them or have latched against them, and that is fascinating and fun to me. There have already been questions of oh, can we trust them? Do they have ulterior motives? And I obviously can't answer that, but I'm very glad that those questions are being asked. That makes it much more interesting for me. I'm realizing I can't say anything else without spoilers. I guess all I'm saying is that I enjoy the scenario as it is unfurled. It has been exciting and interesting to me. I'm also realizing that this question was targeted just at me and may not be something that either of you guys have comments on.
I was about to say, this is absolute cheating. You can't just pick a question to talk about your NPCs.
Damn. Here, let me generalize that. What's a character that your players latched onto unexpectedly, and how did that make you feel?
Wow. Well spun. Guess I have to answer that now, huh?
Sure do.
Look at this guy improvising. It's like it's what we do here. Boy. Domino was one.
Ooh,
I'd be a little bit lying if I had said it was unexpected that somebody would latch onto him, because I put him there for Drake to latch onto. But he latched onto him a whole lot harder than I thought he was going to. And also, his inevitable betrayal became way more of a thing than I thought it was going to, as we've discussed at great length. There's several other kind of examples about that, Malkoth. This is not really one individual character, but Malkoth continuing to drill down over and over on the like drug cartel
Hell yeah.
in my sense. Like that was a totally made up on the spot thing because his character was like, let me get some drugs, and it just turned into like a full subplot. So like coming up with pot pie and bottle and gox and all these ridiculous halfling drug dealers has been very unexpected and not at all, but you know, in the pre-campaign notes for the shindig. I'm trying to think if there are any other like specific NPCs that you guys have really latched onto that I didn't, that were like kind of side characters to begin with.
Right.
But yeah, I'm struggling to think of a specific example right now, but in general, I love that shit when it happens. It's great.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost more satisfying than when the players latch onto the people that you knew and expected they were going to. It's fun to like flesh out a character in real time just because people have started caring about them.
I don't think anybody latches onto my NPCs.
Yeah, nobody liked Rickon at all. Or Lockett.
So, unexpected, though, is the key word there.
That's fair.
Like, Rickon was your brother. I knew you would care about him.
Fair. What about Teru? Were you expecting especially Biscuit to latch onto Teru the way that he did?
I guess Teru was kind of an unexpected thing, especially from Biscuit. I should say especially from Biscuit. It was just like an oversight for me.
Right, like you should have seen it coming.
Yeah, like I built this character for Biscuit unintentionally, and then sure, lo and behold, he latched onto them. So yeah, Teru, Talon to a degree. I knew that like Frisk was going to be very attached to her, but I was very pleasantly surprised that other people enjoyed her.
Yep. I think that if anyone besides Nox had met Wendell would have been one of those.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think especially for Wake, because I've been like, I've spent a lot more time actually like diving into character specific NPCs as opposed to making too many of my own. I think like a lot of the attachments have been pretty well predicted. I don't think you guys have really like taken a huge attachment to any of the like weird one-off ones.
Fair.
Maybe like 10 long.
A little bit, yeah. Oh, dude, this is the wildest one ever. That tree in Kosetsu Jin, I care about that stupid tree way more than I should.
That's fair.
Not the one that fell off the cliff, the one in the temple. I don't give a shit about the one that fell off the cliff. I think could die for all I care.
Cool spot.
Oh yeah, cool spot for sure.
Yeah.
I thought of a big one for mine. Lo was a throwaway shopkeeper that I had like half a sentence written about.
Lo's great.
And also the cat. The talking cat.
Oh my god, we still don't know what's up with fucking Yingling, do we?
Sure.
We probably won't. That's probably not going to get solved by the end of the campaign.
I'll explain it after the campaign.
They're text.
Don't you worry.
Perfect.
This is how we tie in that campaign.
Gotcha.
But yeah, Lo was just like, you guys were headed to this settlement in the Golden Wastes, and I was like, putting some notes together about it. I figured you guys would probably want to shop while you're there, because you guys like to shop. It's like, there's probably someone here that sells magic items. Where would they get them? Probably just collect them from ruins around. Who's out there collecting magic items? Just some little knoll girl. They'll like that. And that was fully it.
Yeah.
And she became like a huge NPC, obviously.
We did it. That was me, which means Drake's up. We probably got like 20 minutes left.
Oh, let's go 10 minutes in Canadian time.
True.
Because this is a GM roundtable, we should probably do this one. what are one or two tips or tricks or practices that you think every GM should know? And how about players?
Oh boy. I'm up first. Shit. Okay, for a player, I can't stress enough. I know I already talked about it, but it's the most useful information I've ever been told. If you want to get your character involved and you want people to like your character needs to dig into other characters. Your character should be the one that is going to the other characters and asking them questions, learning about them, asking them to help with problems, asking them if they need help with their problem. Don't monologue. Your character exists to be a tool that you can use to dig into other people's characters, and that will make them like your character more in return. We should do player advice first, and then come back and do DM advice so I can think of something good.
Fair.
Oh no, that means I have to come up with player advice. I was over here trying to think of GM advice this whole time.
Or do one or the other, you know.
No, it's fine. Just praying over here. Hold on.
We're all very good improvisers. It's what we do all the time.
Oh my goodness.
I've been very clear that I do not improvise. Yeah, I don't know. For players, I think it's like spotlighting isn't quite the right word, but like maybe it kind of is. Acknowledge that you are one of X players at the table.
Yeah.
You know, take the time that's allotted to you and try to. It's essentially also kind of what Fex said. Like, take an interest in the other players' characters too. That's what makes the game interesting. Is like interactions between characters. And for GMs out there, I feel like we've talked at extreme length about many things, but maybe specifically, roll dice about it.
Roll dice about it.
Just roll dice about it. Don't fight the dice.
Amen.
Go with where your players are taking you.
Big amen.
It's hard for me to think of player advice because, like, I've been blessed with a table of incredible players. It would be easier for me to think of player advice if I had like if I had like a problem player. But don't be like this motherfucker.
Yeah, don't be that asshole.
My players are all wonderful. I'm trying to think of the things that make them so wonderful.
Hey, only play D&D with friends that you've had for like a decade and get along really well with and know how to like talk through issues with and solve problems with. And have the right schedule to play at the same time as you and can talk like adults.
Yeah. It's pretty solid. For player advice, give your character some kind of a tick, some kind of a button that can be pushed to get them to do stupid shit.
Yeah. Have a weakness.
Yeah. Stupid shit does not necessarily mean, goof dildos, but, you know.
Betraying their own intelligence.
Yeah, have something that makes them vulnerable.
Yes.
Something that makes them exploitable.
Hell yeah.
For lack of a better way of putting it. It's a very good tool that you're giving to your DM to help drive the story. It makes your character a lot more fleshed out. And it's more interesting to have a character who is a little bit vulnerable at times.
Absolutely.
You know, I thought of a good piece of player advice that we've talked about before, but it's not since the last roundtable.
Yeah.
When you write a character backstory, remember that you are writing a character that is at the beginning of their story.
Yes. Oh my god.
So, like, if you're writing the backstory for, like, Batman, your backstory should say, like, my parents just got shot.
Yep.
And have decided to fight crime.
Yeah.
Full stop. Don't put the Batcave in your backstory. Don't put the Batmobile in there. Don't put all your villains. Maybe put a villain. But like,
Put at least a villain and one friendly NPC.
yes, absolutely. Put Alfred in there. Put the guy who shot your parents in there, and leave the rest open ended.
Yep.
Don't it's okay to write a long backstory. I'm all for a long backstory. I write long backstories, but don't write a long backstory that includes all the great heroics and everything that your character has done and the massive role they play in the world. Because you're writing a presumably level 1 character. This is
Right,
assuming you're
right.
starting at level 1. So like, set yourself up for the start of a story and let your DM take it from there.
Amen. Even if you're not starting at level 1, you're at the start of a campaign. If the only thing that your character brings to the table is the promise that over the course of the campaign, the little backstory you wrote is going to be revealed, that's fine. Everybody loves those moments, but what people really care about is the story that is unfolding at the table. That's the one that everybody is invested in. You should only write up to the point that the current story starts.
And give your GM like as many little wind-up cars as you can, and just let go of them. Like, write it. And this may just be me as a GM talking. Other GMs might not always agree with this, but like, I love when a player brings me a bunch of hooks and a bunch of NPCs and a bunch of like stuff that I can work with. Like, yeah. I've received a handful of backstories from players that are like pages and pages and pages of just essentially like lore that I can't do anything with. And then I've received very short backstories that have bullet points of here's 8 ways that you can, take my character's story and run with it.
Right. Give them problems that they immediately wish to solve and an action that will make them follow a path to solve that problem.
You as a player are giving your DM a bunch of Lego blocks, and then you collectively with the rest of your group are giving them Lego blocks so that they can build a Gundam.
True. I would upgrade the metaphor from Lego block to magnets. Your character should be pulled in a direction, and you should give the other half of that magnet to your DM.
Some GMing advice: at the beginning of a campaign, set up a questionnaire.
Yes.
Give it to your players. Make sure that they are all giving you the same information. Some players will already give you a very fleshed out backstory that has tons of information and plenty of stuff for you to use, and other people will give you very little. Having a questionnaire, make sure that you have at least a hook and like NPC for everybody that you can pull in. And if people give you more, that's great and fine, but at least you have a bare minimum to kind of work with.
Yep.
It'll make it so much easier to like spotlight and build stories together. It's great. Highly recommend.
And that bare minimum should include, why is your character willing to work with 5 strangers?
Yes.
And stay with them even if they don't get along great.
And players, please, for the love of God, write a character that is willing to work with 5 people.
Yeah.
True.
Please, for the love of God, do not bring a character to the table that is like, I only work alone. Right. It's like, hey, bye, write a new character.
Right, like why would the party continue to travel with that character?
Lesson learned.
Correct.
DM advice. I thought of one. A lot of DMs chase the high of surprising their players. And I have found that, yeah, that's fun sometimes, but it's also very dangerous. It's an easy trap. If you're living for that gotcha, you can fumble real easily. There's a lot of way to fuck that up. Let me tell you how you never get fucked up. Learning to enjoy being surprised by your players and by the story that they tell and that the dice tell. The most fun that I've ever had as a DM is when I learned to enjoy being surprised and just rolling with it. It's what this game is all about. I think we did it. I think that was all 3 of us did player and DM.
Yeah, we did.
I think we did.
You want to do one last one to close us out?
Last question to close us out.
Can you do one last question, and then we can do one more to close this out?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, if you got one. If everybody has one that they really want to get out, maybe we'll do one last round.
and this one's just for Drake. What are the top 5 worst things about Pat? I'm just kidding.
Let's go.
The social role system. It's the worst part.
We made it this far. We made it this far. I'm not going to do it. Hold on. Let me look here.
You're not going to pull that trigger. I will.
Here's a pretty good question. How do you maintain tone when your characters have dramatically different personalities and backstories?
This is a good one. I almost did this one.
Number
Is that me
57.
That's you first.
You don't. For me, at least, I find that the best thing to do is just kind of... You can have those tones exist, but try and, instead of trying to have like multiple tones going on in the same sessions, separate them. So,
Sure.
For instance, Alistair came to me with a fucking Alice in Wonderland reference. I was like, cool, I get to do weird, wacky, like, nonsense fantasy. But at the same time, I have Gohaku, who is very, like, rigid, feudal bunny lord. And trying to juggle those essentially meant just, like, having 2 different regions, one where we'll, at some point, be able to go and do wacky and weird shit. And you can kind of help juggle the tone that way. The other thing is also just be consistent with yourself, and then hopefully your players, if they're good, another player advice, follow your DM's fucking lead with tone. And just hopefully they will fall in line. And if you're, doing a crazy, like, gothic horror sequence, hopefully people fall in line. And then if, a dick joke comes out, you just have the dick joke moment, and that's fine.
Everything Drake just said is true. I agree with all of it. I want to emphasize that, like, there is a threshold where you say, this character is great, but they simply do not fit with the tone of this campaign. Try to save it for a different one. Like, that's a sentence you need to be willing to say to your player if they bring something that's just not a good fit for your current campaign.
True.
With that said, I've got a cheat code. I've got 2 cheat codes for you. The first cheat code is comedy. You can make any character fit if they are kind of viewed through the meta lens of, oh, this is the comic relief, and they're going to do some weird things, and that's kind of fine. You can forgive a lot of sins through comedy. You can also forgive a lot of sins through whimsical Feywild nonsense. Boy, can you get away with a whole lot of weird shit if you just say, oh, they're from the Feywild. What a great cheat code that they've given us. It's the only good thing about the Feywild, which notoriously I hate. Also, I don't know, I think a lot of it is just like learning to take the idea that was presented, find the part that is important to the player, and see if you can bend it towards the tone of your campaign while maintaining the part that they were fond of.
Frankly, if your D&D campaign isn't rife with tonal whiplash, you're just...
yeah.
We're playing different games.
Right.
I'm running a campaign that has truly a Super Mario... Oops.
Oop.
Headset cut out there for a second.
Hey, there you go.
Hey, we're back. Yeah, if your campaign isn't full of tonal whiplash, we're playing a different game. My campaign has truly a Super Mario spoof character, and then truly the most tragic D&D character I've ever seen.
True.
And, like, they were the 2 whose backstories were intertwined on top of all that.
Yep.
All that,
Yeah.
like, that has never once detracted from, like, the thing, you're not going to maintain tone. It's just not going to happen. Like, or I should say, like, depending on what your tone that you're going for is, if
Yeah.
it's any kind of like narratively heavy or dark or serious, you just people can't do that for 4 to 6 hours straight. There's going to be dick jokes. There's going to be levity. You need that to make the heavier. It enhances and improves, doesn't detract from your tone.
Yeah.
So let your one character that's all Super Mario, Alice in Wonderland juxtapose against the dark stuff, and it makes the dark stuff darker.
Absolutely.
Yeah. As long as nobody's making dick jokes while somebody else is crying.
Right.
Unless it's really sweet, because that's the only way that can ever spill out.
That's true.
It's either really not a good time, or it's the sweetest thing you've ever heard.
Right. Players do have an onus to be respectful to one another in their moments of tone, and DMs have some responsibility too to police that some. But
True. I think it's worth saying that, like, tonal consistency is an optional objective, and maybe your table doesn't have it, and maybe your table doesn't need it.
Yeah, my table doesn't. I love Age of Awakening. I'm very proud of it. It's a wonderful campaign. I love my players. There is no tonal consistency.
Yeah.
Every session goes from extreme highs to extreme lows in terms of like serious and grave versus like Patches loading up a Honda Odyssey, Tamara Scrim watching Inspector Gadget in the middle seat. Like it can all coexist. That's what D&D is all about.
Absolutely.
That's why we're not out here writing books or making TV shows.
And sometimes you've been crying for an entire session, so you decide you're just gonna go and sleep with your adopted brother in your single acronym.
Christ.
Exactly.
Christ almighty. Didn't even sink in that was a step bro moment.
It's just a little step bro.
Truly it is the 2020s. It's me, isn't it? It's my last one.
Yep.
Final question.
I'm a selfish person. Like, I'm gonna ask another one that I want the actual answer to. You all and a lot of the players are really great at doing voices for your characters. How do you get so good at creating different voices, and how do you keep them consistent?
Gang, the car is a wonderful place.
True.
That's seriously where I do all of my voice work practice. It's just in the car, driving, practicing voices.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not I think I've gotten like okay at the few voices that I do. I'm not great at like accents and stuff, especially, but just lean into it. Your players aren't sitting there like criticizing the voice that you're doing.
Right.
Just lean into it, do it. You'll get better at it with practice, and consistency is the hard part. That unless you're practicing all the time, like there's definitely times when I've like done a voice for an NPC, and then like truly 6 calendar months later, it's time to do their voice again, and I'm like, oh shit,
Yeah.
what did this guy sound like? But again, your players aren't going to notice if they sound different, so don't sweat it too much. And just like if it is important to you, just practice it every now and then. Right? Have a couple honestly, the best example of this is our dear friend Baby Boy. Have your like line that gets you into the voice.
Trigger phrases are so good.
Have your one Baby Boy and just go about it. Have the thing that gets you into the voice.
I'm terrible at voices, so I have no good advice for this.
I don't know if that's true.
It is true. I am not good at it. I don't practice. I get very self-conscious when I try to practice. I'm bad at it. We have a bunch of people in our group that are very wonderful at voices.
Philo is so good at voices.
Philo, Frisk.
Oh, yeah.
Neo and Kingdom are both, Neo and Lush are both fantastic at accents. Like, definitely hit them up for this. We need to do a players table where we ask this. They're much better than me.
We've talked about doing, like, instead of a DM roundtable, like, let's get all the players and talk about it. And that, I think, was kind of, we were leaning more into let's talk about our characters and the campaign. But, like, we could ask meta questions like this, too. Anyway, we're talking about it. We've talked about it. That's the only thing I can say is we've talked about maybe doing something like that sometime. I also don't have much to add that hasn't already been said. I think the trigger phrase thing is incredibly useful. Have a phrase that gets you into the voice very quickly so that you can just jump into it. I fucking love the Game Changer. I forget the Shakespeare episode where it's the blood to get into the Peruvian accent. It's so good; it gets me every time. The other one is think of the last time that you sat down and thought about somebody and was their bad accent or like their bad voice. Like, when's the last time you sat and said, "Oh wow, Drake did a voice that was really bad the other day"? Because I know my answer, and it's never. I've never sat here and thought that, and it's probably true for everyone else. And that's a good way to boost your confidence. And confidence is the number one thing when you're doing voices. You have to lean into it hard, and it will sound better.
All right, Drake.
Last
All right.
question.
Take us home.
Pick well.
I do have my top 10 worst things about PF2. If you want to ask a question.
It's you're tempting me. No, I was gonna say, what's our favorite thing about each other's DMing?
Oh, that's sweet.
That is pretty sweet.
I figured since we made it the entire episode without shitting on PF2, that we might as well end on a sweet note instead of a sour one.
There's still time for that if we want. For Drake, it is absolutely 100% the NPCs. That has always been your strongest suit. It's always been the thing that I enjoyed the most from your games. Is not just like the way that you act them, although that is certainly good, but the way that you put them into scenarios that are deeply hurtful. Deeply, horribly, awfully hurtful. It's the worst, and I hate you for it. It's great. And for Zeke, it's kind of a combination of the way that character stories are woven together, but honestly, it's like the world building, I think, is Zeke's strongest point. Being like every time that we go explore a new place and learn about the role that it has been doing the whole time, that's the good shit. I eat that shit up.
Oh, shucks. Thanks. Philo brings up a great point in chat. Sorry to go back to the voice thing. If you are trying to learn how to do an Irish accent, watch a bunch of shows with Irish people talking.
Oh, true.
Anyway, I agree with Feck, Drake, that NPCs are the best. I remember before you started Wake, you sent me just a bunch of headshots of a bunch of your NPCs. I didn't know anything about them. I didn't know their stories. I still don't because I've only watched a few episodes of Wake. But like, they're just so fucking interesting. Even just how they look. They're all so fascinating. Your NPCs, just like I said before, they feel like rich and real and like deep. They feel like genuine as hell. Love them.
Oh, thank you.
In fact, there's a million things I could say, but I'll say encounter design. Your fights are always insanely engaging. Just fun and interesting. I've been playing D&D for 7 or 8 years now, and I'm never bored in a FAQ encounter. It's always interesting. There's always a little stank to it. The encounters always rule.
I always like to bring a little stank.
Yeah, I guess we're done.
We did
All right, gang. That's all the time we got tonight.
Feck, especially recently, but even in Crosswinds, but especially lately with Wildfolk, the different environments and locations have always been extremely compelling and interesting. The fucking giant elemental giraffe.
Yes.
I love Searchune so much.
So it's so cool. Yeah.
I'll take it.
Although the weird environments and locations have been a highlight.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Zeke, your incredible ability to make me just feel emotions that I've tried to repress all my life.
As I said before, it is my deepest joy as a DM to make my players feel feelings.
Hell
so
yeah.
glad to hear that.
Yeah. Well, mission accomplished.
Boy.
Also, just mad appreciation for you putting up with me being like online and thousands of miles away and still playing with you guys.
Oh heavens, I wouldn't be the same without you. That is not a chore. It's an honor.
True. My favorite part of Pathfinder is multi-attack penalty.
You know, it's funny you say that. Because that's
Funny.
only my like third least favorite thing about Pathfinder.
It's funny that you love bad game design so much.
Genuinely, though, it's such good game design.
It's truly one of the worst executions of that. Like, I can understand the, like...
I want to make a system so bad. I just have so many other things.
I
If you
understand
want,
the desire and the intent behind map, but it's just executed so fucking piss poorly. They're like, look, man, we want people to do other things on their turn other than just attack. And they were
Right.
like, cool, we'll punish them for attacking more than once. It's like, all right. And then they were like, what do they do with their other actions? And they were like, well, they could grapple somebody or like shove them. Well, that's kind of like attacking. We should punish them for that too. It's like, cool. So I might as well just fucking attack again,
Yeah.
I guess. Like, they added a system where they managed to make all of your worse option or your other options worse than just attacking with the penalty. Oh god. Fucking atrocious system.
We did it. We got a little salt
did
in
it.
at the
We
end.
did it. We
You
poured
did
a
it.
little salt on it right at the end, just as we needed to.
Wonderful.
All right, gang.
I love you guys.
Same.
Love you too. Thanks for doing this, gentlemen.
For sure.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Yeah. If you're going to be on tomorrow night, we're having like a little fake mini session with just a couple of the Wild Folk people to deal with some downtime stuff. I think it's going to be like Narafi and Branch and possibly Tex and Sketch. Mostly talking to Landfall NPCs about things. Same time as usual, 8 p.m. Little thing. Otherwise, we'll see you guys on Sunday for Wake or Tuesday for Wild Folk.
Have a good night, y'all.
Bye, y'all. See ya.